Welcome back to the channel. This is Freddy Storm and you are watching What If Naruto Became Vandar's Secret Successor. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no more time. Let's start the story.
There is a lot of chaos because the Jedi have won their final major battle against the Dark Sith, but the Jedi Order is in ruins as a result. Unaware that the Force has started to rise on a far-off world in the Outer Rim, the Jedi attempt to reconstruct their broken order from the ashes. The Force will be released again from this world, and the new Chosen One will be guided by the Force spirits of the Sith and Jedi of the past before finally unleashing the Force. The scene then shifts to a view of a lush, blue planet with the stars in the background. His dreams were filled with recollections of his troubled past, the incident that had led him down the path of the dark side of the Force, and his encounter with the three Force spirits that had permanently altered his course in life. He recalled the day he was betrayed and exiled by someone he had once considered a surrogate mother, who ultimately had only pursued power to keep her new role. As if he were the demon he had carried since birth, he had witnessed numerous so-called friends turn against him, embrace their hatred and rage, and vent their anger on him at Euro, an event over which he had no control whatsoever. He still recalled the day he had gone to see Tsunade to discuss his future and that of the teammate he had saved from the village's biggest danger, who had ultimately done everything in his power to get the boy, even if it meant paying a high price. The older woman was obviously suffering from a hangover from the previous night's heavy drinking and was not in the mood to amuse herself or anyone at the moment. Nevertheless, she appeared different for some reason, even though the alcohol had nothing to do with it. His curiosity turned to horror as he read the clauses and punishments for simply completing a mission and realized that there was much more going on behind the scenes that he could not see, but the pain and anguish from what she had done to him had hurt him more than any assassination technique could ever do. He approached the desk, being careful not to agitate her because her punches and strength were no laughing matter. He also discovered a document with his name parted on it and learned what it was meant for. His mind was racing. Is she torturing me because of Sasuke? It's unfair that I have to endure this because of what the Fourth did to save these unappreciative people. I have fooled myself for far too long into believing that I have a chance here, but I was a fool. There is no hope left in these people's hearts. Why should I suffer because of them and the fact that they cannot let go of their hatred? There is no more reason for me to remain here because I have bled for them for far too long without receiving anything in return. At this point, Tsunade was able to think clearly enough to realize that someone else was in the room with her. She saw the young man, whom she considered to be her younger brother, standing in front of her desk with a piece of parchment that would determine his fate. However, because of the effects of the alcohol and her hangover, she was still not thinking clearly, so instead of trying to console him, she responded angrily and hatefully, snatching the document from his hands without even bothering to read it. In her rage, she placed her official seal on the document, not caring that she had just destroyed the young man's last hope for many years to come. This was the event that marked the beginning of his descent into hell. She called in a number of her personal bodyguards, the Anbu, after stamping the document. They were also shocked by what they saw, but they obeyed orders and started dragging the young man out of the office, leaving him with nothing to do but yell out why and whether or not everything on the document was true. To his complete chagrin, she simply replied, "Yes, now get the hell out of my office, you little brat." He knew that if he stayed, his life would be in grave danger, so he had to leave as soon as the deed was completed and the parchment was in his hands. The banishment order had permanently taken away his ability to use nin jutsu from this day on. Unless this evil and dark place as he saw it now wished to have his ability returned to him, he would have to leave. Even though everyone here would be aware of his darkest secret, over which he had no control, and would do everything in their power to make his life even more intolerable than it had already been, he had read the document and knew that, for some reason, she wanted him to suffer even more in the future by making him return to this terrible place. What was worse, according to his book, was that he would not be allowed to enter the Land of Fire for the next 3 years without fear of death. It had taken him more than a month to reach what some referred to as the Lost Era, but he knew that he could not remain in one place for very long because there were multiple groups of people who would want nothing more than to either have him killed or use him as their own personal weapon. Many people would never voluntarily enter this place, he has heard, thinking, what a perfect place to hide. According to one of the stories, a Dark Order found a new home here after a great and terrible battle with flying ships from beyond the stars took place in the sky. The boy who had been denied so much in his life would suddenly be given what some can only call one of the greatest powers in the known galaxy. He found out that this place was actually a large graveyard and battle site with strange metal buildings that seemed to have once moved among the skies themselves. He entered several of these strange, silent metal structures and found that they had many strange things. It was here that he encountered them. The light and dark sides of the Force flowed strongly, waiting for the day of their return. Having witnessed numerous incidents that would lead the boy down both the dark and the light paths, leaving him in balance, the spirits themselves have discussed and finally decided how to approach the boy and train him. The darkest of them decided it was his turn to train the boy down the dark side because it was a strange way to do the right thing, but because of the events, he would soon become a part of what would allow him to grow in a way that no other person in this land would ever receive and return the force to this would once more. After completing what he could only describe as his initial search of this ship's bridge, Naruto discovered two rather odd-looking corpses that had been in mortal combat with each other at the time of their deaths or the ship's crash. Since he had found no other bodies in this section, he decided to at least give them some dignity and place the bodies outside for a proper burial, keeping their odd-looking cylinder weapons for himself because he had noticed that they were still functional and realized they could be very useful against his numerous enemies. He felt a strong presence at this point and turned to see what he could only describe as the ghost of an evil-looking old man standing in front of him with a curious expression on his face. At the same time, the men seemed to have an aura of fear, hatred, and even evil about them that was balanced with a calm, collected nature. He realized that although this man had done great evil in the past, he had also contributed to a significant event that had altered the balance of power. However, Naruto was not afraid of this spirit, rather, he felt a desire to learn everything and to finally give voice to his anger and hatred before they destroyed him in the process of trying to control them incessantly. "Hello, young one. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Darth Sidious of the Sith, and what would your name be, young one?" the spirit in front of him said after nodding. The boy said, "Naruto Uzumaki, are you going to hurt me?" The answer to this question was, "No, my boy, I have no intention of hurting you. In fact, I have a proposal for you." The spirit could only laugh. What kind of proposal? In contrast to other spirits he had previously encountered, the spirit spoke to the young boy honestly and said, "Both I and two more spirits wish to train you in our arts. I have elected to begin your training first." Since the boy's face and eyes showed worry and concern, the spirit said, "I can assure you that to be trained by us is your choice and yours alone, young one. So I ask you this. Become our apprentice, learn to use the force starting with the dark side." With an overwhelming sense of power, Naruto knelt before the spirit and uttered, "I pledge myself to your teachings and that of my future teachers." Good young one, the force is strong with you. A powerful Sith you will become. Henceforth you shall be known as Darth Vader. I give you this name in honor of one of your teachers to come my young apprentice. With a bow, Naruto addressed his new master, saying, "Thank you, my master." It said, "Rise, Lord Vader. I have much to teach you and so little time. There are things happening in this land and I believe that you will play a very important role in events yet to come." The spirit grinned and gestured for him to follow. He committed himself to the Force's teachings during the first year of his exile, telling his master repeatedly that he also experienced the power of the light side and that at times they were in balance. It was at this point that Sidious realized the boy was prepared for the next phase of his training. It was up to his next two teachers to continue his training and to teach him the necessary skills to better control his anger and hatred, especially after what had been done to him for so many years. Although many would think that the Force had somewhat tempered the Dark Lord of the Sith, Sidious would still miss the young boy and watch over him from the heart of the Force, which was strong with the boy after all this time. When he first met them, they agreed to continue his training in the areas of ninjas and samurais as well as the Force. Over the course of the following 2 years, he would learn a lot from the samurai of the Land of Iron and eventually travel to the Land of Wind to study under their wind monks because he felt more at peace there than in the Land of Fire. By the time his banishment order had expired, which would have required him to return to the Hidden Leaf, he made the decision to study under their monks in the Land of Water, with the blessing of both the Force spirits and the Wind monks, who respected his decision to continue his quest for knowledge. Additionally, he made the decision to go back to the Lost Era and the nearby small village. With a little assistance from the Land of Snow, he was able to start making changes there and was starting to win the village's respect for his efforts. He met her here, one of his closest allies, who had come to this world to assist her distant cousins in regaining their position as soldiers and warriors. These men and women leave this world with all of their technological marvels, knowing that they could cause more bloodshed in the process. Additionally, Naruto and the Nine-Tailed Fox had agreed to collaborate and even exchange information at this point, thanks to the spirits and monks of both wind and water. The biggest surprise was what the fox had called a gift, which turned out to be the memories of his mother, who had been his previous host and even revealed his true name to the young man. His time in the Land of Water had not been as tranquil as he had initially hoped, and the memories had only strengthened his resolve to never go back to the Hidden Leaf because of their deceitful behavior. They had also added to his already overwhelming fears that he would be killed or reduced to slavery if he went back there. The true daimyo of this land is Naruto, who avenges those who were murdered and even saves the future cage of the Hidden Mist Village, May. The new warlord, who had replaced the previous Mizukage and the legitimate government of the Land of Water, decided that the Water Temple had insulted him in some way and ordered their destruction. Naruto had finally had enough and made the decision to put an end to this bloody war once and for all. He marched under the guise of a bounty hunter to help the warlord fulfill his ambitions for power, but instead he entered the private office that resembled a throne room and used force to lock all the doors before slaughtering everyone in the room, knowing that they had committed serious atrocities against the people of the Lead of Water and that no one was innocent. At this point, he had gained the respect of tyrants, and everyone in the elemental nations began to fear the name Darth Vader. The bloody genocidal wars in the Land of Water were ultimately put an end to with the assistance of the villagers from the Lost Era, their cousins from the Stars, and the Mist Rebellion. Throughout the third and fourth years of his exile, Naruto made the decision to start hunting down his fellow hosts and, on multiple occasions, killing several members of the Akatsuki organization in an effort to save not only his homeland but also those like him who had no say in their status as human sacrifices. On one of his trips through the Land of Wind, he had rescued the daimyo of this country and his daughter, as well as the seven-tailed host, Fu, who had been on the run after members of her village had sold her out to the Akatsuki to leave them alone and to remove what they saw as a stain upon their village. Unfortunately, the organization had been very strong, and several of the tailed beasts along with their hosts had been lost to them. Although they only knew him as Lord Vader and not as the Nine-tailed Fox's host, the two members who had pursued her were the first to actually experience his wrath and fury and made it through. Since it was the day he met her, he had pleasant memories of it. Naruto traversed the desert of the Land of Wind with a specific goal in mind: the capital city, which was home to the daimyo of this land. Recently, he received a request from the daimyo of the land, asking him to protect not only himself but also the man's daughter during some of their travels, both within the Land of Wind and outside of it. He sensed his master's presence as he made his way to the meeting place, a tiny oasis in the desert, to meet his future employers. He then stopped seeing the three ghosts in front of him and said, "Lord Vader, there is a disturbance in the Force." "I have felt it, my masters, in fact I feel one now, ahead of me," he replied. After closing his eyes and sensing the Force surrounding them, Anakin turned to his third apprentice and uttered the words, "You must hurry, there are innocents in danger and someone just like you. You must move quickly, Lord Vader, or this host will be in great danger I sense," Sidious said gravely, in what some have referred to as his Sith voice. "Do what must be done, Lord Vader, do not hesitate, show them no mercy." He nodded to his superiors and put on his unique mask, which he had commissioned to aid them against foes who employed lethal poisons in battle and which bore a striking resemblance to the original Darth Vader's mask. He then hurried off to battle the enemy and save his charges. He encountered two Akatsuki members he did not recognize at all as he entered the desert oasis. One of them had his gray hair slicked back, a strange pendant around his neck, and a triple-bladed scythe in his right hand. He grinned evilly and said, "It's a shame that I can't sacrifice you for the glory of my god, you little bitch." The person known as Kakuzu stated, "Enough Hidan, we need her alive as well as these two, which will bring us quite a bit of money for the organization." But at this precise moment, for some unknown reason, Hidan flew straight into and then through at least 6 trees before striking a rock face with enough force behind it to shatter many of his bones and seriously damage the rock face. The theme from Darth Vader's Imperial March begins to play in the background. Everyone was taken aback by the shocked expressions on the faces of the two Akatsuki organization members, as well as the fact that they heard an odd breathing noise as someone wearing an odd-looking bottle cloak with a hood approached them and exclaimed, "I will destroy you." At that point, he took off the battle cloak to reveal odd-looking armor underneath and a sort of mask made of black glass where they could hear breathing sounds. However, it was the man's eyes that terrified them the most because they were both glowing, but one had the darkest sea blue wall and the other had the most evil-looking tenant of red with a dark yellow iris that screamed death and destruction to them. "Allow me to introduce myself and that of my partner here. I am Kakuzu and this murderous priest over here is Hidan, and what might your name be?" Kakuzu decided to introduce themselves after Hidan had finally returned to his partner with a look of complete pain on his face and hatred for this person. They also wanted to know if this person would reveal his identity to them and whether there was a sizable bounty on his head that they could later collect. The man in question narrowed his eyes and said, "I am Darth Vader, and I am a Sith Lord. You will release my employer the daimyo and his daughter and relinquish your hunt for this young woman or I will show you no mercy." His voice sounded metallic, like Darth Vader's. Seeing genuine concern on his partner's face for the first time in their relationship, Hidan asked him, "Why do you look so scared all of a sudden? We can kill this motherfucker easily." "Oh really, You do know that this is the man who single-handedly ended the war in the Land of Water as well as slaughtered an entire army of rogue samurai that numbered in the thousands without breaking a sweat, and let us not forget that he just threw you across this desert oasis with absolutely no problem, and let us not forget that you are still putting your bones back in the right place. As he reinserted his collarbone into his body, Hidan appeared unimpressed and declared, I am so going to kill this guy with a fucking smile upon my face as I do it and then sacrifice him to my god. Hidan was shocked to see that the Sith Lord had taken out two rather odd-looking cylinders from his hips, and with a single motion, they blazed to life with an odd humming sound. Naruto had sealed his lightsabers onto his body using his mastery of seals, and he had also created auxiliary weapons to use with his force abilities as well as his chakra abilities, which would allow him to use his three elements in combat: fire, water, and wind to make weapons as deadly as a regular lightsaber and even combat said weapon. Vader wasted no time in drawing his weapons and putting the two Akatsuki members on the defensive right away. This made Hidan even more irate when one of the sea sabers of Vader sliced his scythe into tiny pieces and, with another swift motion, took off his right arm just above the elbow. The second saber then pierced him right through the chest with a single, fast-moving catch upward, slicing his left collarbone into leaving a huge hole in his chest. The strange man then pushed his hands forward without ever making physical contact with them, until Hidan was struck again by the same kind of force, this time sending him through a rock that was only a meter away. After noticing this, Kakuzu tried to approach Vader from behind and almost had his head severed in the process. If he hadn't been a ninja for so many years, he would have been beheaded immediately. He then heard the man say, impressive. Two of the monsters were sent to attack the Sith Lord after Kakuzu used his hearts to activate his abilities. However, he watched as they were completely destroyed in less than a minute, and he started to feel a little scared when he heard the Sith say, most impressive. After witnessing Hidan attempt to reassemble the majority of his body and pick up what was left of his own, Kakuzu realized they could not win this battle and that they needed to quickly alert their leader to this new threat, so they fled. After observing them until they were unquestionably in complete retreat, Vader turned to face his employers, bowed respectfully, and asked, what is thy bidding, my master? It is a pleasure to finally meet you, Lord Vader, said the Wind Daimyo as he approached him with the two young ladies. This is my daughter Akon, and this young woman, whose name is Fu, just met you. While the holographic image of the Akatsuki leader Pain gazes upon the scene before him with a sense of shock and surprise, Kakuzu and the other members of the Akatsuki organization were busy attempting to put Hidan back together. He could hear the insane and foul-mouthed priest shouting his obscenities as they slowly put him back together and watched as a number of weapons makers from the Hidden Rain village started to forge him a new scythe. Pain asked, are you sure this was the man known as Darth Vader? After turning to face Kakuzu. That was the name he told us, and what I know about this warrior it all fits, but he was far more powerful than I had anticipated. While I believe that Hidan really would have survived the battle, we were clearly no match for him. I lost two my of hearts to this man who seemed to see everything coming at him, and he was not using any chakra in any of his strange attacks. He only used it to power the weapon he was using against us, which are of a seal design I have never seen before. Pain was now genuinely shocked to learn of the man's abilities, but he also understood that the Zombie Brothers, as the two men had come to be known within the organization, were obviously not the best group to deal with this person's unique abilities because they were primarily trained for close combat. Pain then looked to Itachi and Kisame, who could likely outdo this man because they were unsure if he would pose a serious threat to their plans or to them in the future. As his image vanished from the cave, Pain remarked, he may have caught you two off guard, but at least we have learned some things about him, and I know who to send after him next if he gets in our way once more. In addition to reviewing his battle with the two Akatsuki members and realizing that he had the element of surprise during that battle and that it could have been much harder had they been prepared for him, Naruto sat on his bed and meditated to further control his abilities. He also realized that they seemed accustomed to taking a lot of damage and were primarily a close-range team, but the problem was that they would just keep coming. Additionally, he had refrained from displaying many of his skills because he understood that knowledge was a dangerous weapon and that the next team from that organization would be much more difficult to defeat since they would be chosen to counter him and go on to their target, which at this point was a woman named Fu. When the holographic image appeared, he saw a woman wearing battle armor and a man wearing white armor with blue highlights. He then took out a small silver communicator that he had been given and made the decision to call some old friends. The two had not even acknowledged his presence as he chose to draw their attention by asking, "Did I call it at a bad time?" They seemed to be having a disagreement, which gave the impression that they were an elderly married couple. "So are there any wedding plans, or should I just send you a baby gift or something?" he asked, trying to get a rise out of them after they abruptly stopped arguing and turned to face their young friend. After being completely humiliated by the comment, the two of them decided to find out what he wanted to know. Yes, very funny, what is it you want to know, you little punk, they said, rolling their eyes and even hearing laughter in the background. You do know that I can use the force choke you from here, right? She replied. Though it was only intended to draw her attention because she had other things to do. A big bead of sweat trickled down the side of her head as she recalled the things this young man was capable of doing because of his command of the force. Fortunately, her friend was the one to speak. Everything is going well, Lord Vader. We have been able to fully refit and get fully operational 2 Republic destroyers ready for immediate deployment if need. The third will be ready by the end of the month. The woman warrior continued. That lady from the land of snow here has some pretty impressive technology. The fourth one won't be ready for at least another 3 months for even test runs without her help. That's good to hear. Now what have you been able to discover about the other wreckage? Vader said, nodding his head. Both of them anticipated this query. From the looks of things, at least 7 different separatist ships were taken at different times from the Lost Era battlefield, but we can tell this was done some time ago. Maybe even before the hidden villages were even established. Knowing that their village was close to the battlefield, the woman was taken aback when she heard this. And you guys did not even hear this? She asked. He turned to her and spoke with a straightforward kind of voice. That time we were all fighting a different kind of battle just to stay alive. It was only after the hidden villages were established that things began to come down. I mean, we now know that it was the Sage of the 6 Paths that pulled all the ships to Earth in the first place, creating the Lost Era so long ago in the first place. Naruto gave a nod to this and then said, I sense we'll find out what happened to those ships sooner or later. In the meantime, do everything you can to get everything up and running and see to the younglings if you can, since it will be some time until I can return. Don't worry, kid, the woman said with a sincere smile. I'll make sure they all do their chores and don't kill each other. With a lot on his mind, he deactivated the communicator and pocketed it, wondering what would happen next. Very well, I will leave it in your capable hands. May the force be with you. As he put his mask back on his face and left the room the Wind Daimyo had given him while he was in the capital city, he felt a real connection to this young woman and realized that he wanted to learn more about her. In an attempt to get her attention, he knocked lightly on her door and, to his surprise, she opened it to reveal her savior standing in front of her. She gestured for him to take a seat, but before she could do so, he pulled back his hood, bowed to her, and said, Allow me to introduce myself properly, Ms. I am Darth Vader and I am a Lord of the Sith Knights and a Jedi in training as well. It is a pleasure to meet you, Lord Vader. I am Fu. May I ask why you come to see me? She said after giving him a nod. He looked at her and then said, You remind me of someone I once knew a long time ago who in a sense saved me from myself. He was much like you in many ways, even down to your burden that I know you had no choice in, just as he did not. Who was this person who changed your life so thoroughly? She asked him further, genuinely surprised and intrigued. With a more contemplative expression, he closed his eyes for a moment before stating, his name was Naruto Uzumaki. When Fu asked, You knew the hero of the hidden waterfall village, what happened to him? Her expression was one of complete shock and surprise. His village banished him for completing his mission to retrieve a fellow ninja who had betrayed the village, but because of the injury they then punished him instead. At the moment I have no idea where he is, and for all I know he is in hiding, as the same people that were hunting you were hunting him as well. He was the one who told me about the Wind Temple that I intend to return to soon so that I may continue my own training in their arts. Just because I am a Sith and Jedi does not mean that I have stopped training in other areas. As an old saying goes, there is no knowledge that is not power in the right hands. Fu was genuinely impressed by his words, but she started to wonder, is it true what they said about you? After recalling what the 2 Akatsuki members had said about his actions. He was taken aback by the query but understood what she was referring to and responded. From a certain point of view, yes. Some of it has been greatly exaggerated. I did walk into a room that was filled with many high Jonin level ninjas and proceeded to wipe them out, as they had been orchestrating the war in the land of water and a response before killing quite a few people. But I can tell you that it was no walk in the park at that time. I have a few scars here and there thinks of them, but that was about a year ago. As for that group of samurais, was more like 100 instead of a 1000, and only half of them were elite class samurais, and it was no walk in the park for me. Some people say I'm easily a cage level opponent, and I might be, but I'm not done learning just yet. When Fu realized that those pursuing her would never stop and that she needed to get stronger for her own protection, she asked him if it would be okay if she went to the Wind Temple with him. Is it all right if we go with you to learn? She asked. Not at all. In fact, I believe it would be most beneficial for you and for your future. Pain, the leader of Akatsuki, looks at the 4 members he sent on their new mission. Kakuzu, Hidan, Itachi, and Kisame, we have received intelligence that the hosts of the One and Seven Tails will be traveling to the Wind Temple for training with the monks there, and this will also be a perfect opportunity to obtain them, which is why I am sending all of you to obtain them, but also in case you encounter Lord Vader once more. It was impossible for Hidan to suppress the thought, good, I want to sacrifice that motherfuck personally. The leader, however, had a different plan and made the decision to express his views. If you can somehow recruit him to our order and if not destroy him, you two will not engage him again. You will simply go after the two hosts and leave the battle with Lord Vader to Itachi and Kisame, because I believe they would be the better opponents to face this warrior. They all gave a nod and got ready for their task. As they continued their journey to the Wind Temple, Gaara, Fu, and his sister Tamari were rapidly becoming friends as they walked alongside the composed Sith Jedi warrior, who was grinning beneath his mask and was pleased to see two of his friends getting along with each other. Fu had also gotten to know him a little better and had a lot of respect for the Sith Jedi warrior. Before she could even ask her question, he turned to her and said, I was wondering when you were going to ask about my abilities in that fight. Fu had been interested in his abilities ever since his battle with the two Akatsuki members and realized that they were not the abilities of a normal ninja, even someone like herself. She gave him a startled and intrigued nod as he went on, my abilities come from a mystical energy source known as the Force. The Force? Inquired Tamari. The Force is generated by all living things, it binds us, penetrates us, and has a will of its own. That is why there is a light and a dark side. The light side was almost entirely used by the Jedi Order except for the rare cases of certain Jedi who fell to the dark side. Back in those times, if a Jedi fell, it was a very dangerous situation, but the Force is now in balance once more, Vader stated. Despite what many might think, Naruto had maintained contact with his old friend, who was similar to him. So I take it there are significant differences between the Jedi and Sith then? Gaara asked his old friend. The Sith, on the other hand, embraced the dark side and acknowledged that fear could give them great power and sought to both use and control it. Vader nodded his head and continued, Fear attracts the fearful, the weak, the strong, the corrupt, the innocent. Fear is my ally. The Jedi, on the other hand, were meant to protect people at all costs, but they were also forbidden from developing attachments to anyone, not even their own family members, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, or children. So the Sith saw fear for what is an emotion and they can be used like any other tool. Tamari asked him after they realized they were obviously taken aback by the last one. He gave her a nod before adding, yes, but a tool with its own will. It is possible to live on both sides of the Force here on Earth. For instance, I am a Jedi to the innocent, but to the dark and evil people, I am a vengeful Sith Lord who is waiting to kill them for their crimes. With the Force back in balance, many people who would have fallen to the dark side can no longer be fully controlled by it, and Jedi can safely resume their lives, including families. They were in a small canyon area, which did allow some opponents to hide themselves very well, but they also noticed that he was immediately becoming more aware of his surroundings than before. He knew that at least 4 people were there with obvious hostile intentions toward them, and he immediately recognized, I know you're there, so you come to be cut into pieces again or have your hearts ripped out by my hands. This startled his 3 friends until they heard what might have been the foulest mouth they had ever heard in their lives scream out in indignation. How the fuck did that cocksucker son of a bitch know we were here? Itachi made the decision to try negotiating for their targets first because he knew that the Vader would pose a serious threat to them and needed to be dealt with first. Our leader has issued an opportunity for you to join our organization. All you need to do is step aside and allow us to obtain our targets, he said as the 4 Akatsuki members introduced themselves to their target. Vader approached them at this point and removed his battle cloak, exposing his combat gear to all. However, the expression in his eyes made them all uneasy, especially since the other 3 were preparing for battle. He then declared, I will not permit you to ruin these innocent lives that have already suffered greatly at the hands of others. If you know it's best for you, leave now, don't let me ruin you. I am so going to sacrifice this fucker right here right now, yelled Hidan, who was prone to losing his temper. At this point, the 3 others saw Vader extending his hand toward Hidan and started to say, you don't need to sacrifice us. To their astonishment, Hidan started to appear as though he was being controlled before saying to the man, I don't need to sacrifice you. You will instead attack your partner for he is a threat to us. He immediately attacked his partner after saying, I will instead attack my partner for he is a threat to you all. His partner was taken aback by this development and realized that they had once again underestimated their opponent. Your murderous priest has a weak mind due to his anger and desire to appease his god, and the Force gives me the ability to manipulate the weak-minded, Vader said, turning everyone else to face him. Itachi then shared his own thoughts on what had just happened, much to everyone's surprise. Oh shit, I so did not see that coming. Okay. Who the hell are you and what did you do with the Itachi Uchiha that I know? Kisame asked, turning to face his partner. He has the ability to control people if they have weak wills, which is not even something I can do without a major genjutsu, Itachi said, without turning away from his opponent. He has effectively kept his opponents at 2 instead of 4 opponents, so if we want to complete our mission, we must now attack him with everything we have. However, I secretly hope they murder one another. Kisame expressed his own opinion after expressing agreement with his partner's assessment. I'll take on this Lord Vader. I can take away the use of his weapons and easily destroy him. As he pulled out his original lightsaber, they saw the Sith Lord turn back to his traveling companions and say, take on Itachi, and if you have to, the other 2 members as well, while I take on the sword user. Kisame took this personally, saying, I am so going to enjoy killing you now, as he removed his weapon for combat. The blue-skinned former mist ninja was shocked beyond belief when he realized that his sword was not using the chakra that was supposed to power this weapon as he had been told, and he was even more shocked when he realized that his own weapon was having to use its stored chakra to protect itself from being destroyed by this strange weapon made of light. Vader grinned beneath his mask and said, you will try. He then activated his lightsaber and executed a backwards flip with the help of the Force, and then started an epic sword duel with the Shark Man. Itachi was completely taken aback by what his opponent, Lord Vader, had done. Hidan had attempted to sacrifice Kakuzu, and he was now battling for his life against 2 Jinchuriki who were attacking him non-stop. He was able to glance at his partner and see that Vader was easily matching Kisame in swordsmanship, but that neither of them had a distinct advantage over the other in combat. At the precise moment that Itachi had to avoid what appeared to be a tentacle of sand aimed directly at him, Fu and Tamari were attacking their target repeatedly with an unrelenting rage that only a woman could have in an effort to permanently end Itachi's life, while he also tried to survive this battle. Despite what some might think, Kisame was finally having a meaningful sword fight against a man who obviously knew the art of the blade better than anyone he had previously faced, with the exception of his fellow mist swordsman. He could see that although he had the upper hand in strength and experience, his opponent was faster and more nimble, making them a dangerous combination to face. Then Kisame said, despite the fact that I have to kill you, I like this. He was now grinning ridiculously. You believe you win this battle, but we are evenly matched thanks to our training in our respective arts, Vader said, glaring down at the blue-skinned fighter. The blue-skinned warrior remarked, oh, I am starting to like you a lot more now, but I have a job to do and I think you know that. I hate saying this, but we are in a stalemate. Neither of us has a clear advantage anymore and our comrades are in a very serious situation, Vader said, smiling even more beneath his mask as he realized that neither of them would win this battle, despite the fact that the 2 zombie brothers would hopefully be dead today, reducing the number of enemies you have to face in the future. Even though Kisame detested admitting it, it was obvious that neither of them would win this battle and that it was time to cut their losses and flee. However, before either of them could decide, they heard Kakuzu scream as Gaara's sand coffin crushed the last of his hearts, ending his long and wicked life. At the same time, Hidan returned to normal as the suggestion that Lord Vader had placed in his mind had finally been fulfilled, albeit not by his own hands. Hidan noticed that something was seriously wrong when he started to look around. He turned to see that his partner had been, for want of a better word, crushed to death and that their mission had failed miserably, especially after Itachi ordered them to retreat, which they all did. Vader walked back to his friends as soon as the remaining Akatsuki members fled, saying, I think it's safe for us to resume our journey to the Wind Temple, please follow me. After the 2 teams' remaining members returned, Pain was completely taken aback by what he discovered and realized that he had misjudged his opponents. So he possesses many other weapons and is quite skilled in the art of the sword and up to your level as well, Kisame. The swordsman with blue skin just nodded their heads and replied, I think he was holding back a bit as he does not want us to know more about his abilities, which means it will be harder to develop a strategy against him in the future, but it's clear that our team would still be the best hunting him down and I believe he will only get stronger in time. Pain then turned to face Itachi and asked, where would you rank his strength level based on what you've seen? I believe he is at the same swordsman level as Kisame and would easily be a mid-Jonin level opponent, and I believe he will only get stronger with time, and I believe he also knows where the 9-tailed fox host is as well thanks to some of the tactics he was using. Pain realized abruptly that they needed this man alive and that, because they had somewhat underestimated their opponent, he would now be pursuing them and mercilessly killing them. Because of his training as a wind monk, Vader was able to connect with the Force and the surroundings while in a meditative state. He opened his eyes when he sensed the head monk standing in front of him. Have I done something wrong, Master? He asked, bowing his head slightly. No, absolutely not, but I must inquire as to why you haven't revealed your true identity to the young woman, the monk inquired. In a way, it was a question he had been asking himself for some time. He acknowledged that he had a connection to the young woman and would be delighted to learn more about her. After placing his hand on Naruto's shoulder, the head monk said, "I understand how challenging it is for you to balance good and evil, light and darkness, but don't let the past ruin your future. Finally, take action to remove the seals from your hands so that you are no longer constrained. I think your enemies will grow more dangerous over time, and your former home Yuro, which I can tell you has been searching for you Yuro, will require all the assistance you can get, my friend. Proceed with your training now." Having realized that he had been too obstinate for his own good and that it was time to finally remove his handicap once and for all, Naruto raised his hand to examine the seals on them that prevented him from using nin jutsu because of the actions of his former home village. Tsunade was taken aback by Jiraiya's recent revelation that the Akatsuki had reportedly increased their efforts to apprehend the remaining Jinchuriki as quickly as possible. The organization's recent actions have only intensified their eagerness to apprehend the hosts, and thus far, they have been successful in doing so. Tsunade was aware that they would be at the organization's mercy if nothing was done quickly. So they've managed to capture quite a few of the Jinchuriki already and are making their moves against the rest? She asked Jiraiya after turning to face him. Yes, they have really stepped up their efforts to capture the rest of them, even going so far as to try to kidnap the daimyo of Wind Country himself as well as his daughter, and almost had their hands on the Seven Tails Jinchuriki as well if it wasn't for the warrior known as Darth Vader. Jiraiya continued. Since there were so many fascinating tales about this Sith warrior, Tsunade was drawn to this. How did this Darth Vader get involved in this battle with the Akatsuki? When the Wind Daimyo hired him to protect him and his daughter, he happened to run into the zombie brothers of Akatsuki as they were trying to kidnap them and capture the Seven Tails. I'm not even sure if Darth Vader is his real name or if it's just a title, but I do know that he was merciless to them, using skills that no ninja I'm aware of can perform. Itachi and his partner Kisame were present to deal with him specifically while the other two captured the 7.1 tailed hosts, according to what I recently learned, but he had another encounter with them. I infer from the way you are reporting this to me that they have stepped up their efforts if they are targeting the K's cage this quickly. Did they fail in their endeavor? She questioned him. Oh yeah. Vader was able to match Kisame in an epic sword duel that ended in a draw between them, Jiraiya said after simply nodding his head. Gaara and the Seven Tails both engaged Itachi, and let's just say that Vader possessed some sort of power that caused one of the two zombie brothers to battle the other until Gaara discovered a gap and killed him, forcing the other three to flee. So, this Vader assisted in the murder of one of them. Do we know the Seven Tails' fate or her name? She inquired. If the stores are accurate, Vader may have had some sort of contact with Naruto and the brat may have been training at some of the elemental temples as well, which would explain why he sent both Fu and Gaara to the Wind Temple in the first place. We think her name is Fu, and as far as we know, she went there with Gaara and Vader. I think she might be learning to control her abilities. That's the story I've heard, at least, the elderly pervert told her. Right now, their only choice was to convene a Cage Summit meeting in the Land of Iron to talk about and get ready for the upcoming conflicts and to plan for the future. When the sound of battle woke Fu, who had been enjoying her time in the Wind Temple, she hurried out of bed, dressed, and ran out into the middle of the garden, where Gaara and his sister were among those enjoying a light breakfast and some green tea as if nothing had happened. Vader is just in some heavy training outside the temple walls right now. He removed a weakness late last night and it's finally allowing his full potential to come through, the head monk told her, genuinely surprised by their actions. If you wish to see what he is truly capable of, just walk up to the observation deck of the temple. She was both shocked and irritated, but she just nodded her head and hurried up to the deck to see what appeared to be a small army fighting below her. It was obvious that the Sith were deadly fighters in their own right, and she saw several of them shooting what looked like lightning from their hands, while another seemed to be literally levitating others as if they were nothing in large groups. In the middle, she saw one that seemed to be using two lightsabers rather than one in close quarters combat, which made him even faster and more dangerous. The figure in the center appeared to leap into the air, then let out a yell, followed by a strange wave of energy that, within seconds, disintegrated the nearby clones and pushed nearly 100 more back until they vanished in clouds of smoke, indicating that they had been dispelled. One figure then fell back to the ground and quickly replaced his lightsabers on the belt that adorned his waist, watching as the rest of his clones went about their business and made their way back towards the temple, feeling for the first time in a long time that he was no longer bound or contained by the actions of others, as he had been during his exile from the Hidden Leaf Village. He used the Force to open the doors of the Wind Temple as he walked back inside, and as soon as he was inside, he used the Force again to close them behind him. When he looked up, he saw Fu's shocked face staring him in the eyes with her mouth open, realizing that the strange warrior who had saved her was Naruto Uzumaki, the hero of her former village. After giving his head a quick rub, Naruto remarked, "Well, you wanted to know who I was and I was planning to tell you in private." "You said he's saved you from yourself," Fu said, startled to see the face of a man she regarded as a hero and learn that he had assumed a false identity. "In order to follow my hatred and gain power in the dark side, I gave up my previous life a Euro, including my name a Euro, when I first became a Sith warrior Fu. However, after remembering my former life, I had a dream in which my younger self asked me who I was and what I had changed into. If I had run into any of my former allies at that time and my freedom had been in jeopardy, I would have killed them. At that point, I was able to regain my equilibrium and be the person I used to be. So, from one perspective, what I told you was true," he told her. After being taken aback by his remarks, she asked herself, "A particular viewpoint?" As he continued, "Both the Jedi and Sith look at things from a certain point of view. My point of view is to look at things in balance, to see both sides and to try to make the right choices, and sometimes there is no right choice, but at the same time there is no wrong choice either." They were now sitting directly across from one another, enjoying some food. "However, you could have simply told me when you visited my room." Fu uttered those words. "I will honestly say that the thought had crossed my mind, but then I came to the realization that just knowing who I was could have its own dangers. Remember what I once said, there is no knowledge that is not power in the right hands. Well, any knowledge in the wrong hands is dangerous, and there are those who take that knowledge from you by force if necessary," he replied to her. "So you used this new identity to protect yourself and those you still cared about while still being free to move about where you need to. I wish I had that kind of protection," she said, realizing that he was correct and that her current position and powers were already dangerous enough for her and that she didn't need any more danger added to her already dangerous life. He spoke to her seriously as he assured her, "It's not permanent, one day they will find out who I am and will come for me, of that I can promise you." Vader, or Naruto as he prefers to be called sometimes by his birth name instead of his Sith title, had advanced well to the rank of a high Jonin ranked ninja and could easily be on his way to a master rank in his Force abilities both on the light and dark side of the Force. It had been almost a week at the Wind Temple, and the three Jinchuriki had done well in their training to not only harness their new abilities but also to gain more control over their already existing ones. In addition to training together, Gaara watched his fellow hosts grow closer, and he grinned knowing that his first true friend had at last found someone who could permanently mend his broken heart. At this precise moment, a messenger hawk descended and landed directly in front of him, holding a huge scroll in its talons, waiting for him to retrieve it. It was then that he saw the seal, indicating that it was extremely significant and that it had originated from the Hidden Leaf rather than the Sand Village. When his curiosity finally got the better of him, he gently took the scroll from the hawk, which took off, and started reading it with a startled and then irate expression as he realized that they were finally taking the Akatsuki organization's threat seriously. They had called a Cage Summit meeting in the Land of Iron, and it said that he could bring up to 2 bodyguards to the meeting, which was scheduled to take place in a week. By this point, he had gotten up and walked over to his fellow hosts and handed the scroll to Naruto, who started reading it and realized that things were getting worse because their enemy was becoming more aggressive in their pursuit of power that should have been in the hands of those who had been sacrificed against their will in order to hold back the destructive forces of nature that had been created here by the Sage of the Six Paths so long ago. The scroll had made a unique request that Lord Vader himself be one of the Cage's bodyguards because he and Gaara had first-hand knowledge of the organization and could help the assembled Cages search for information about their shared enemy. He then gave the scroll to Fu and then looked at Gaara and replied, "Despite what my personal instincts and experiences of the Hidden Leaf are telling me, I don't think this is a trap in the slightest, as I believe the threat that the organization is posting is genuine, but I also sense that a great deal of trauma is about to fall down upon all of us." "So you're going with us when we go?" Gaara questioned his friend. After facing him directly, Naruto remarked, "Of course I do. By going there as well, we will also learn a bit about our allies and enemies and what their actions would be to the other hosts who are still out there." "I agree. However, Fu, I believe it would be wise for you to remain here where it is safe, as I have a feeling that it would be practical for you to continue your training here. Also be sending several of my top Jonin to help in your ninja side of the training. After all, we cannot rely too heavily on our tailed partners, as the Akatsuki are trained and paired together to take us down. By doing this, it gives us a huge advantage in the future against them, which will then give us the advantage. We leave for the meeting in exactly 2 days. That will give us more than enough time to arrive before the meeting starts," Gaara said with a nod of his head and started getting ready to leave to the Iron Land. The 5 Cages of the Hidden Villages entered the room where the meeting to discuss the future of the elemental lands would take place. Up in the special viewing area, each Cage's bodyguard was on guard for any trouble, but there was one additional person standing next to the Hokage of Konoha, who Lord Vader immediately recognized as the Toad Sage Jiraiya. Given the significance of the meeting, she seemed surprised that everyone had bothered to answer her summons. The only bad news for the Land of Water was that it had already lost its 2 Jinchuriki to the group they were not here to discuss. Gaara had already been told that the current Mizukage Mei was a good and personal friend of his and was also closely monitoring a group of warriors he had helped bring back to prominence and who now protect the new daimyo of Water Country. They also promised to assist him if the elemental nations ever needed them again. Tsunade and Jiraiya quickly introduced themselves to the assembled leaders of the hidden ninja villages, and began to describe the threats that the Akatsuki organization represented not only to their village, but to the entire world as well, and basically formed them of all they knew, including the known members of the organization, and that only 1 or 2 had even been killed in the last 5 years, which instantly set them all in a sense of concern, as they knew that anyone who had achieved the rank of A to S ranked threats in the bingo book were not to be taken lightly, and then organization that consisted of nothing but S rank threats and up was not an organization to be taken lightly by anyone, especially as it was learned that they were paired in teams of 2 and were extremely mobile and difficult to track as well as to engage, as they were picked to complement each other's abilities and to cover their weaknesses to ensure that their missions were successful, and that it could take very highly skilled ninja teams to even engage one of them with a marketable chance of success. The Land of Lightning and the Hidden Cloud Village were the only ones without even the slightest connection to the organization, and or at this moment keeping both of their Jinchuriki hidden within their village or in their territories and protecting them from the organization, as well as preparing for the future attacks they knew were coming. Tamari and Naruto, who was at this time wearing his full battle outfit as Darth Vader, as they observed the other bodyguards while he recognized the ones from the Land of Water. It was the ones from the Land Fire that concerned him the most, as one of them had been someone he considered a brother who had tried to kill him to gain the ultimate power of his family's bloodline, and the other was a man who should have been trying to help him become stronger but instead had focused on the young man beside him who had been handed everything in his life, all because of one terrible event that had claimed his entire family and left him an orphan bent on revenge. They were Sasuke Uchiha and Kakashi Hitaki. As he continued to speak, Naruto realized quickly that Jiraiya must have had a spy inside the organization who was providing him with information that could be used against them. However, he chose to draw attention to the fact that Darth Vader had successfully engaged 2 teams on separate occasions, merged not only to survive but also to cause significant damage to both teams and assist in the killing of one of the organization's more dangerous members. Lord Vader, would you please show yourself? Gaara chose to use the art of theatricality to introduce his friend to his fellow leaders and to see what would happen with them, because almost everyone in the room was eager to meet the man known as the Sith Lord, who had successfully freed not only an entire country but also protected a daimyo, part of his job description. At this precise moment, a black figure struck the table and then ascended to its full height, accompanied by an odd breathing sound emanating from the mask covering his face. His eyes, which were one of the most eerie looking things they had ever seen in their lives and had a red rim with a yellowish center that sent shivers down their spines, shocked everyone because they had never seen eyes of this kind before. One of them appeared to be glowing blue. Then, with a voice full of purpose, he said, "What are you doing, Lord Casecage? Do you think the members of the organization you fought will continue to pose a threat to the other Jinchuriki and the villages as well?" Gaara asked, smiling internally. "The dark side of the Force clouds the future," Vader said, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. "This can only occur when the Force is out of balance. It is currently impossible to predict the potential future." As they continued to perform their roles, Gaara had a hunch that something else was happening and would question him about it later. "Lord Vader, are you not a Dark Lord of the Sith? Can't you see what's coming by using the dark side of the Force? I have received training in both your Shinobi and Jedi arts, and while I am a Sith warrior and a Lord, I am not a Dark Lord. Even though the future is uncertain at the moment, I can presume that you will try to find or apprehend the remaining Jinchuriki because of the ongoing increase in our enemies' numbers brought on by this organization. Many of you have made their lives miserable, so they might not view your efforts to protect them as sincere and might try to flee, knowing that they might live longer on the run and that their current enemy is doing this merely as a job where some of your ninja may try to capture or kill them at all costs." The Sith warrior's statement, "You say you have met several of them. Our villages will not be a death trap. I will not make them a slave or weapon," greatly offended Tsunade. With an honest sense of truth and hatred in his voice, Vader said, "And yet you will issue an immediate recall for them no matter the cost to the life they have now. I have met the one you're after, and he is not your friend anymore, and he is not your subordinate, and he would rather die than return to the village he knows will be waiting for his death at the hands of your honorable civilians." He was addressing the leader of the Hidden Leaf, but the person he was speaking about leapt down to defend his leader, his face displaying pure rage. "You know nothing of our village, and if you have any information on the whereabouts of Naruto Uzumaki you will tell me right now, or so help me." Sasuke had grown weary of this warrior's words and had made the decision to stop it immediately if necessary. As the Uchiha desperately clawed at Sasuke's neck, trying to stop whatever was choking him to death, everyone in the room was shocked to see Vader's hand extended towards his throat. However, when he looked into Lord Vader's eyes, the Sith warrior said, "I find your lack of loyalty to him most disturbing, and demanding things of me tends to get people killed." "Vader, that is enough. I believe you've made your point. Release him now if you would be so kind," Gaara said, quickly realizing that if he did not take action to stop his friend from dying soon, the Uchiha would die in front of them. He did not care, but it is better to prevent a war from starting. After letting go and placing his hand back at his waist, Vader uttered the words, "As you wish." As the pressure on his neck subsided, Sasuke quickly inhaled and realized that this strange warrior could easily kill him and possibly the others in our group. The senior ninja leader next spoke, "Lord Vader has a point. Your village did after all banish someone who had completed a mission to retrieve a traitor even at the cost of his own life, and what was his reward? You banished him and have since been trying to navigate the fallout. It's a miracle you have any allies left and will take another just to have a chance at bringing him in. Good luck, you're going to need it." The meeting was taking place in the Land of Iron when a starship bearing the emblems of the New Republic and Jedi was speeding toward the planet with the obvious goal of the elemental nations. The ship's commander was none other than one of the galaxy's few surviving Jedi Masters, who was regarded as one of the more reckless and somewhat unstable Jedi, along with his two apprentices, who were still learning how to control the Force because they were still young. One of them walked up to their master and asked of him, "Master, why are we headed into the unknown region to a planet that I've never even heard of before? For years I've been feeling a disturbance in the Force coming from this region, and it's so strong like nothing I have ever experienced. It is so strong in both the light and dark side of the Force," the Jedi Master said, turning to face her and meeting her eyes. "Why hasn't the Council chosen to travel to this planet and investigate its causes, given that it is sufficiently powerful in both the light and dark sides of the Force?" she questioned him. "I have felt that this planet is in balance," he said, turning to face her. "My apprentice and I have a true balance, but there's more because I sense that they use Force just like us. And we'll know for sure in due time." Jedi Master Silas, along with his two Padawan students, Sam and Mavis, had been searching the Land of Iron's capital city for the source of the intense Force feelings. They sensed that the person they were searching for had visited the city not too long ago. "I can't believe what that son of a bitch said about us, and he has the nerve to hide Naruto from us," was the first thing the three Jedi noticed when they heard a woman talking to her three friends while they were strolling down the street. The large man said, "Calm down, princess. We'll find him in time." After coming to a complete halt, the woman turned to face the man with the white hair and said, "When Jiraiya? He should have returned by now, and that son of a bitch Darth Vader is fully aware of his location. It's been 5 long years, and we are fighting a war we can't win. I simply know." The three Jedi recognized the name right away because it had belonged to one of the most formidable and perilous Sith Lords in the history of the Old Republic. But why would anyone have that name on this planet? Silas moved forward with his two Padawans right behind him after sensing through the Force that these individuals were somehow related to the Force user they were searching for. When Tsunade and her three friends saw the unfamiliar people wearing brown traveling cloaks approaching them, they immediately formed a defensive stance. The leader raised his hands and remarked, "I mean you no harm. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." "That was quite rude of you, mister. I apologize. I'm Jedi Master Silas, and these are Sam and Mavis, two of my Padawan students." "You mentioned Darth Vader, right?" she was asked by the Jedi Master. The Jedi Master's recent statement startled the Konoha ninjas. "Jedi? Do you understand what a Sith is, then?" Being one of the few Jedi left in the galaxy who had encountered a dark Sith, Silas was now quite worried. Where is the Sith now? Gaara and Tamari noticed that their friend appeared more tense since they had started their journey back to the Hidden Sand Village, and Naruto could not shake the feeling that something was amiss, both from his own instincts and a disturbance in the Force that had made him tense. In an attempt to satisfy his curiosity, Gaara asked his first friend what was wrong, saying, "You seem troubled." "I think something has happened back in the Land of Iron, but I'm not sure exactly what it is," Naruto said, turning to face his friend. Knowing his propensity for such circumstances, Tamari started preparing for an impending battle after learning that anything that the Sith Lords suddenly became worried about was something to take seriously during their time together. Silas had just finished explaining the Jedi and Sith to Tsunade, and the four-leaf ninjas were in complete awe as they flew in the Jedi vessel that was now looking for the Sand Party on their way back to the Land of Wind. After seeing and boarding the incredible starship that was now circling their world in search of their targets, Tsunade and her friends trusted the Jedi Master completely. She merely hoped that the Jedi could persuade Vader to give up his knowledge of Naruto's location without a fight breaking out. However, by quoting a long, dead master, Silas had shown her how dangerous and cunning the Sith could be. Those who joined the dark side, lies deceit creating mistrust are their ways now. Although she was aware that Vader could have used the young Jinchuriki to carry out his wishes, she fervently hoped that this man, who held the secret to someone she loved very much, still had some humanity left in him. She glanced at her bodyguards at the same moment and saw that they were all pondering what was going to happen, but it was the young Uchiha's expression of hunger and desire that made her pause for a second. Though he was more focused on his current task and evaluating himself against the Sith Lord, Silas had started to feel a strong pull in the Force towards Sasuke and wondered if the boy would make a good Jedi candidate in the not-too distant future. Mavis saw the three people walking through a large meadow that was big enough for the ship to land. She immediately pointed to her longtime friend and went to the back to tell her master. In the forward cockpit, his two apprentices kept their eyes on the instruments in front of them as well as out the window, searching for their prey. Knowing that a confrontation was imminent, Sam lowered the rent and swiftly maneuvered the ship right in front of the sand party. When Naruto, Gaara, and Temari heard a strange noise right behind them, they turned around quickly. To their surprise, they saw a ship of some sort flying through the air, stopping right in front of them, and then landing. A landing ramp descended as the ship landed, revealing 4 leaf ninjas walking down and 3 robed people they did not recognize at all. However, the 2 Send ninjas recognized their longtime friend's tense demeanor right away, and he turned back to them and said, "Whatever you two do not interfere, this is unfortunately my battle. My name is Jedi Master Silas and these are my Padawan learners Sam and Mavis, and we are here because of you Sith Lord you will tell us what we wish to know," said Silas in a commanding tone of voice as the 3 Jedi faced the Sith Lord and the 4 leaf ninjas moved to the side of the ship. When Naruto placed himself squarely in the path of the Jedi and the people he had been hired to protect, he became aware that his dark side of the Force training had tainted their perception of him. But like the fabled Darth Raven, he had also discovered equilibrium in the light side. As a Jedi would in such circumstances, he would refrain from taking the initiative and then speak as his breathing sounds made the Jedi tense, recalling a long, forgotten lesson that Master Sidious had taught him. The battle will be yours if you break them before you fight them. The fact that Jedi still exist in the universe makes me both happy and concerned, but your choice to support them does not bode well for any of us. Why have they told you, Master Jedi? He was questioned by the Sith Lord. After being taken aback by the Sith Lord's statement, Silas asked himself curiously, "What do you have against the Leaf Ninjas? I assume they told you about Naruto Uzumaki, and that I am supposedly keeping him from them." The Jedi Master merely gave the question a nod. "Did they tell you everything including that they're responsible for his banishment in the first place, that his life was less than pleasant to put it simply?" The Sith Lord asked, merely laughing. "I will have to ask them some important questions later but your presence on this world is putting them in great danger so you will tell me where this young man is and I will make the perfect decision and you will tell me what is really going on. Where did you come from Dark Lord?" the Jedi Master said, turning his head quickly to look at the 4 Konoha ninjas. He saw that they were quite uncomfortable with the question that the Sith Lord had brought up to him, and he realized that he would need to have a more thorough conversation with them about this at a later time. After observing that the Sith Lord's eyes appeared to narrow in response to the Jedi's demands, he answered in a way that made it clear what he intended to say. "You call me a Dark Lord, and I find that insulting. Yes, I was trained in the dark side of the Force first, but I was also trained in the light side the Jedi way. Like the young man they are searching for, I was born here, this is my home, and you have no right to dictate to me what I should do." Unexpectedly, Silas extended his senses to feel the energy of the Force enveloping this young man, leading him to the shocking realization that this was the person he had initially sensed in the Force here on Earth. He sensed that the light and dark worked in unison as the Force flowed around the young man, and he thought that perhaps he had found the way of truth balance that so few Jedi were said to have ever known in the galaxy's history. However, before he could inform his apprentices that they were leaving, they both quickly removed their rubs and pulled out their lightsabers in preparation for battle, and before he could stop them, they attacked. In contrast to someone like himself who had already experienced intense combat and life, or death situations, they were still novelists facing an experienced master. Naruto used his training as a shinobi and a Force user to avoid every one of their attacks. It was evident that they were almost at the level of a Jedi Knight but were still apprentices in their form of combat. As he watched the battle unfold in front of him, Silas realized that he would have to intervene to prevent his students from being killed by this Sith, who had clearly witnessed combat in his life. His 2 apprentices had grown impatient with the Sith's continued attacks on him before realizing that he was testing them. The 2 apprentices immediately withdrew as the Sith Lord remained firm and inspected them before stating, in a tone that was both patronizing and supportive of their efforts, "The Force is strong with you too, but you are not Jedis for yet. Sam was infuriated by the remark and immediately started to fight the Sith Lord again with all of his might, but Vader kept dodging every blow and made no effort to engage the young Jedi in combat. After some time, though, Vader had finally had enough of the young, impressionable Jedi pushing him closer to his friends and endangering them. After another missed blow, he used force to quickly levitate the young Jedi straight up into the air, and then he threw his other hand out to do the same to the young girl. He held them in the air for a short while before forcefully pushing them away without hesitation, striking the ship hard in the process. The Sith Lord's level of control now really shocked Silas, who realized that he had been trying to avoid a fight rather than kill people. However, his patience had finally worn thin, so a fight was now a possibility. He would try to persuade the Sith Lord to come with them peacefully so that they could understand what was happening, but if he had to, he would engage the young man in a life or death battle. Sasuke had already activated his Sharingan before the battle even started in the hopes of learning everything he could about these people's power for himself. However, as he watched the man who had humiliated him in the conference, he realized that they were something to be both feared and loved. He had already picked up one of the apprentices who had been knocked out, lightsaber, and waited for his chance to face this strange warrior known as Vader. For some reason the Force has drawn me to you, but do not think that I will go easy on you, but I do thank you for sparing my apprentice's life, Silas said, hastily removing his robe and drawing his lightsaber. I had no intention of harming them, but I will not allow them to endanger my friend spinning, and if I must stop you, so be it, Vader said, swiftly removing his own battle robe to reveal that he was wearing a set of clothes with a little more armor than his previous encounters with the Akatsuki organization. He also brought two of his lightsabers into a ready position. After all, I was the one who more closely followed the Jedi's path here. And that's what it would be? He inquired out of interest. They forgot that a Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. Your Padawans still have much to learn, and I see a strong teacher in you, but I will defend myself from you and them. In order to prepare for a protracted battle, the two of them immediately ignited their lightsabers and formed a defensive position. The Jedi Master Silas realized that this warrior would not attack him unless he was attacked first after he watched carefully as the Sith held his ground and refrained from attacking first. You won't attack me, will you? He said, deactivating his lightsaber and looking down at the young warrior. Vader swiftly shifted one of his sabers into a defensive position and gazed into Sasuke Uchiha's icy, menacing eyes after saying, No, your students are very talented, but they have a lot to learn still. When Vader saw that the lightsaber belonged to one of Silas's Padawans, Sasuke attacked him, thinking the Sith Lord was merely talking, and they engaged in a fierce lightsaber duel. Sasuke's expression was one of mistrust and hatred. Although the two Padawans were in awe of the two combatants' skill in the dance of death, they could also see that the Sith was winning this duel and seemed to be closely observing his opponent. Although Sasuke was taken aback by the Sith Lord's level of skill, he chose to try to get what he wanted by telling the man, You should give up now, you are no threat to me, I am superior to you in every way. You are arrogant and prideful, and I do not do as you say, Vader said after glancing at him. I see your pride growing before my eyes, which means your fall will be all the greater. You will tell me where Naruto is, and if you do not I will destroy everything and everyone you care about. After all, the Jedi say that you are the villain here, and that makes me a hero, so I can do whatever I wish to you and get away with it. Even the Jedi were perplexed by his statement. You are also more arrogant than you know, and your abilities and actions, they all have consequences, and for some reason I feel the Force surrounding you, and yet I feel you becoming even too corrupt for the dark side. However, they soon realized that the dark side did surround him with a strong will, but it also kept its distance from him, as if even the evil of the Force was wary around this young man. Though Sasuke felt something more powerful than he had ever imagined around him, he chose to let his anger get the better of him at this point and attacked the young Sith Lord in an almost fiery rage in an attempt to finally put an end to him. He quickly became more powerful and accurate than he had ever been in his life before that moment, but all of the other Force-sensitive people in the room also felt it as he unknowingly tapped into the Force and allowed it to guide his blade. Sasuke initially believed he was winning until his opponent appeared to be much stronger than he had expected, but Vader was the one who was most taken aback by this and allowed his own rage to quickly fuel his power and strength. Despite this, he maintained control because he realized he needed to end this battle as soon as possible. Vader immediately started fighting with a ferocity that only a skilled Force user and someone who had witnessed numerous battles could have. Even though he had put away his second lightsaber, he was still proving to be a formidable opponent with just one. Vader swiftly disarmed Sasuke before he could even attempt to regain control of the battle. He then used the Force to swiftly reclaim the lightsaber he had taken from one of the Padawans and started choking the Uchiha as the Force lifted him off the ground. Vader then swiftly moved his hands left and right, sending the Uchiha crashing into objects and then into the Jedi ship, knocking him out in the process. In a commanding tone, Vader then used the Force to return the lightsaber to its owner, saying, "Remember, young Jedi, that weapon is your life. Do not lose it to a traitor like that man over there." He then looked at Silas and replied, "I know you felt it as well, Jedi. I know a lot about this young man, and I know that he will eventually fall to the dark side and he will destroy your order." With his lightsaber still in hand and ready to strike at any time, Vader turned and strode toward his friends. As he left a trail of power behind him, a warning to anyone nearby who might try to harm him, he quickly flew his traveling ropes into his other hand. The holographic images of the Jedi vs. Sith battle shocked the Konoha Council room, but they weren't the only ones watching. The holographic communication system also allowed for the viewing of multiple holographic images of the remaining Jedi Council members. "Master Silas, I must ask for your personal opinion upon this Sith," said one of the masters, who was obviously a human. "As far as I can tell, he is well trained in the arts of both the Sith and Jedi. I also sensed both sides of the Force surrounding him and aiding him. In all my dealings with the Sith, I have never felt someone with this kind of control," he told the Jedi Master. The members of the Jedi Council were taken aback by his statement and conferred among themselves before deciding. "Then it is decided, Master Silas. By order of the surviving Jedi Council and the Council of Konoha, you are to apprehend the Sith Lord known as Darth Vader for both the questioning and the disappearance of the former shinobi Naruto Uzumaki and for training as a Jedi Knight." Silas was taken aback by their choice, but he also understood that it might be extremely risky. As a result, he felt compelled to ask, "And what of the Force sensitive we have discovered?" According to one of the council members, he is to be trained as a Jedi, of course. "But masters, I agree with the Sith Lord's opinion. He's too dangerous to be trained in our arts. What if he was to fall to the dark side?" According to one of the council members, "That is why we will train him in the ways of Force, the Jedi ways, not the Sith." Suddenly, a fresh voice said, "I agree with my old friend Silas. The boy is dangerous and should not be trained in the ways of the Jedi." The new speaker, who was obviously a Jedi, had just entered the council chamber, and everyone in the room turned to stare at him. The Jedi Council members were obviously shocked to see him there so quickly, and Silas could only smile at his old friend Hotaru, who obviously shared his opinions and the Sith warriors on training the final Uchiha in the ways of the Force. One of the Jedi Council members remarked, "Master Hotaru, we didn't realize you had come before us." Hotaru made the choice to offer his opinion. "I was unaware that you were even coming here, as you had told Silas that he was clearly losing touch with Force when it appears clearly that he was not, and I have seen this boy and clearly he is dangerous." "Unfortunately, Master Hotaru, the decision is not yours to make. We already dispatching several other Jedis to this world as well as ourselves are en route. We will not leave such a promising young Force users without the proper training to control his abilities. Furthermore, along with the Council of the Hidden Leaf Village, we are issuing an immediate capture order for this Lord Vader so that we may re-educate him in the ways of the Force." A member of the Jedi Council replied with a grin on their face. Knowing there was nothing they could do to change the Council's decision, Silas started to leave the Council chamber, gesturing for Hotaru to follow him. However, he stopped and turned to face them, saying in a warning tone, "I feel obligated to warn you, masters, that this Sith warrior will not allow you to take them so easily. If I had to guess, I would say that he is a gray user of Force, something you have never faced before." "Are you sure, Master, that Hotaru and Silas will do absolutely nothing to train this potential Jedi or about this Sith Lord?" asked a young woman, no more than 20, standing in front of a hologram of her former master. The Jedi Master's holographic image continued, saying, "They refuse, believing that he is a threat to the Order, and at the moment I do not know which way to go. As for this Sith, I want him captured alive and unharmed if possible, Kim." She questioned her master, "Is there anything I should know about him before I engage him?" His holographic representation looked her in the eye and replied, "I'm sending you the coordinates of where we think he is, but be advised he clearly has been trained in both the arts of the light and dark side of the Force. He may be a gray user. It's quite possible that he has a greater mastery of Force than any of us could even understand." After installing several new seals to both prevent their secrets from falling into the wrong hands and act as safeguards in case someone tried to steal them from him, Naruto sat on the ground with his legs crossed, focused on his task at hand, using the Force to rebuild his lightsabers. As soon as he had done so, he reached out and took them from the area they had been floating in. He immediately activated the blades, bringing the Crimson Blade to life in all of its red glory, and then activated the second one, bringing the Blue Blade to life in all of its glory as well. He then deactivated them, strapped them to his side, and left the room, only to see Tamari running up to him with a worried expression on her face. "Tamari, catch your breath, okay, and tell me what has happened," he said, recognizing the fear on her face as proof that something had happened. "There's a ship about to land in the center of the village, and I can assure you that it's not the same one that we saw a couple of days ago," she said, meeting his eyes directly. He hurried back to his room and put on his black cloak, mask, and other new pieces of armor. When he came out, he signaled to Mari to follow him as he headed to the middle of the village to see what would be happening. After seeing Gaara, Kim approached him and smiled, saying, "By order of the Jedi Council and the New Republic, you are to hand over the criminal Sith Lord known as Darth Vader over to my custody immediately." Kim was followed closely by a number of New Republic troops as she descended the ship's ramp. Her tone did not amuse Gaara, who said, "The land of wind and the hidden sand village does not bow your wishes. That and Lord Vader is always welcomed in our lands. When it comes to dealing with a Sith Lord, there is nothing that is beyond our authority. Now you will hand him over to us immediately," the young Jedi said in a more authoritative tone. With a rather irritated expression on his face, Vader approached them and said, "Trying to intimidate them to hand me over, that is more a Sith trait than a Jedi one, but I can sense that you're still a rather young Jedi who appears to be quite full of themselves." Gaara was tempted to use his sand against this Jedi, but instead she watched as her 4 Republic troopers were abruptly thrown into a nearby wall, knocking them unconscious from the impact. "You are indeed very strong with the Force, but I was trained to fight your kind. I don't know why the elders let you get away with it, but I intend to bring you in no matter what," Kim said as she instantly activated her green lightsaber and assumed an offensive stance. Vader then took off his cloak, swung his crimson lightsaber, and immediately started fighting her. All of the Send ninja were completely taken aback by their fighting prowess. Vader had to acknowledge that she had far more experience than he had initially thought, but she lacked the combat skills necessary to defeat someone like him. The two of them blocked each other. Each of their attacks was executed with extreme precision, but Gaara could see that although this woman was extremely strong, her lack of combat experience was her biggest shortcoming in this specific conflict. Vader eventually discovered a gap and seized it. He managed to seize both of her hands and, with a single motion of his blade, severed both of them. He then seized her own lightsaber and brought it to her neck, causing her to drop to her knees and scream for the entire village to hear. He deactivated her lightsaber and threw it into the ship after looking at her and saying, "I had an opportunity to kill you all here today. Tell your Jedi Council that here you do not possess the same kind of powers you once had and that I will be watching you all." By this time, one of the troopers had regained consciousness and was ready to fire his weapon, but the Sith Lord saw it fly at his hands and crush it in midair. "Don't ever threaten people that I care about again. Next time I won't be so forgiving. Now take your Jedi and leave," he said, deactivating his own saber and passing the trooper. It didn't take long for them to depart the village and head towards the Hidden Leaf, which had turned into their unofficial base of operations on this world. By this time, the other troopers had woken up and were either boarding the ship or assisting the other in loading Kim onto the ship and stabilizing her condition. The older of the two men, wearing black robes, said, "We must be more cautious, my young apprentice. We did not expect the Jedi to find this world so soon." The two men then entered a secret compartment on the outskirts of Hidden Leaf Village. "Why should we hide ourselves, my master? They're still searching for this Darth Vader," said the younger of the two, who had gathered with only one eye hole visible. "Inform your man to leave him be. We cannot risk a continuous confrontation with this Sith, and with the Jedi hunting him they will leave us be for a time. And what if this Vader continues to interfere in our plans, my master? But I fear that he will expose our existence on this world. It is only a matter of time, my apprentice, be prepared." The older man turned to face him and revealed that a portion of his face was heavily bandaged. "Then you will destroy him, my apprentice. Always two there are, a master and an apprentice. I feel that this Sith is indeed very powerful, that his masters are gone, but this will also prove quite useful for us if we can control him. At last we reveal ourselves to the Jedi, and if this Sith interferes with our plans we will dispose of him as well." After that, the two of them entered a sizable room that had been constructed far inside the mountain. There were several dozen containers lining the entire cavern, from ceiling to floor, that appeared to be cloning apparatus. Even though the people who accompanied her were shocked to see her so easily defeated, Kim was still amazed that medical science and abilities on this planet had allowed them to reattach her hands. However, she would bear permanent scars from her encounter with Darth Vader, as she had obviously given Master Silas a run for her money. Her master's holographic image examined her and realized what had been done to her. It was also evident that they had misjudged this Sith, as he had not only allowed her to live but also warned that this world was not a part of the Republic. According to Silas, it had taken him almost a week to map the area in order to locate the planet, which was located in an unidentified area of the Outer Rim. She addressed the holographic representation of her master, saying, "I was a cocky and arrogant master. He wasn't trying to fight me at first, and he was trying to send a message, leave us alone." "There is something truly amazing about this Sith warrior," Silas said, nodding his head in agreement with her. "We have to first understand that he is a product of this world, and yet I have felt no true evil from him." His statement startled Kim, but she realized he was correct. Nevertheless, she had a question about the new potential Jedi. I understand, Master, but I have a question about the Uchiha and who will train him. The holographic representation of her master then spoke, expressing his own dissatisfaction with the outcome. I'm afraid that the council has made its decision regarding this young man Kim. Despite my own personal objections, he is to be trained as a Jedi and you are to be his master. In the not too distant future, Silas feared that this choice would result in catastrophe. Being mindful of your student young Jedi, his future is very clouded. After his recent battle with the young Jedi Knight, Naruto decided that they needed to go into hiding for their own protection, so he and Fa were packing their clothes and a few supplies for their trip to a secret location where he had been secretly training some of the orphans from the Water Country Civil War in the ways of the Force. When Gaara and his friend and fellow host entered the courtyard to await their transportation, they saw the rather unbelievable Uchiha Itachi as they left the hotel where they had been staying. Like the small group of sand ninjas who had come to protect their home, Naruto quickly ignited his lightsaber and moved into a defensive position. To their astonishment, he then said, I have left the Akatsuki Naruto. I have also discovered troubling things about the organization and that they are controlled by the Dark Sith. Everyone, even Naruto, was taken aback by his statement and agreed to listen to him. After nearly 20 minutes, the presumed murderer of the Uchiha clan told them all about how he ended up in this situation and how the night his clan was killed. He discovered that the real leader of the Akatsuki organization was actually a dark Sith Lord who was determined to capture all of the Jincha, Riki, for a sinister plan. They were also planning to destroy the Jedi, and worse, Itachi corrupted his brother by allowing him to enter the dark side of the Force. When Naruto sensed a powerful disturbance in the Force immediately surrounding Itachi, he approached him and said, I can feel it in you. The Force is strong with you, Itachi. If you wish, I can train you to use this ability. Everyone in the room was shocked to hear the truth about his past and the danger they were all in now. The former Anbu captain shocked everyone in the room by falling to his knees, just like Naruto had done when he first started training in the ways of the Force, starting with the dark side. Itachi then said, I will do whatever you ask of me. Just give me a chance to try to save my brother from himself and put an end to this war before it can begin. Are you prepared to stop your brother if necessary, but I will do everything in my power to help you save him from himself? Yes, my master, I will do whatever you ask of me. With a deep voice that none of them had ever heard before, Naruto placed his hand on Itachi's shoulder and felt the energy of the Force surrounding them. He then said, the Force is strong with you indeed, and I will teach you not only to control the Force but also to find balance and respect for it, as well as to protect and heal the innocent. You will now be known as Darth Raptor after I teach you how to unleash the full force of the dark side up on your adversaries. Thank you, my master. Rise. Naruto commanded his new apprentice as they saw an antique Republic gunship arrive in the courtyard, prepared to depart. Naruto then unwrapped a black crimson robe and gave it to Raptor, who put it on right away and threw away his old bottle robes from the Akatsuki group. Fa and Gaara were taken aback by what had just transpired and followed the two Force users out of the hotel lobby. It was then that they saw two people leaving the gunship. A man in heavy white armor with blue markings and a woman wearing unusual black armor. The man immediately recognized Naruto and gave him a salute before saying, General Vader, it's good to see you again. Who are the people we will also be taking to the location where the younglings are kept? By the way, did you bring the communication device I requested, Commander Bane? The woman gave him a tiny gadget at this precise moment, which he then gave to Gaara. Gaara nodded to his friend and tucked the gadget into his pocket, saying, it's a long-range communication device that will allow us to talk. Keep it secret, my friend. I will see you soon. Commander Bane Akima Fett, let me interview you to Fa, who is just like me to my new apprentice Darth Raptor, Naruto said as he approached the commander. The Jedi sensed the abrupt shift in the Force throughout Konoha, and he recognized one new Padawan right away, asking, Itachi, what have you done? Though the Jedi and the Leaf Ninjas had grown quite alarmed because any search for Darth Vader had been fruitless, it had been almost 6 months since the two Uchiha brothers had started their training in the ways of the Force and they were already unthinkably powerful. When Naruto entered the spacious training area used to instruct the Force hopefuls, Itachi and a few others were occupied with using the Force to construct their lightsabers. Remember, my students, that the Force is your ally and that this weapon you are building is your life. As I have taught you before, remember that we must protect the innocent with all of our might and that we will unleash the power of the dark side upon our enemies. But you must also remember that both the light and the dark have their own will and you must respect it, Naruto said with a smile as he observed them working so hard. To keep yourself alive and protect the people you care about, you must learn to use your fear as a guide. If the circumstances are right, you can also justify your anger. People must be given the opportunity to turn their lives around, but if they insist on stopping you, you must do so. Itachi's blade was as black as night itself, but the room was filled with a rainbow of colors as the students all finished their sabers and ignited them. His apprentice and all of the current students were now staring at him intently as he went on with his lecture. Protect those blades with your lives and those of your home, which is now being rebuilt because of the tyranny of the Dark Sith Lord Viral. As Itachi followed his master out the door, the students all nodded to him and went on with their studies. Lord Vader, what happened? Yes, the Akatsuki has found the two-tailed cat's host, and we are heading out right now to save her and foil our adversary's plans, but I must caution you that we might encounter Jedi or Leaf ninjas. My apprentice, get ready for the unexpected. As he was getting ready for this mission, Itachi said, Yes, master. At this precise moment, Fa approached Naruto and gave the man who had captured her heart a hug. How long are you going to be away? She questioned him. He looked at her slightly swollen stomach and said, I don't know, Fa, maybe a week. What about you and our little one? She acknowledged that there was still a lot of danger and said, I never thought that I would become a mother or have a family, especially with all of this evil around us at this time and our kind. The Jedi Masters then said, Kim, do you think your apprentices are prepared for a real mission? As Sasuke and his master Jedi Knight Kim entered the makeshift Jedi temple that had been constructed outside the village of Konoha. Yes, masters, I believe he is ready for a mission. All right, we've found the two-tailed cat with the assistance of Danzo, one of the Jincha, Ricky, who also happens to be its host. You have been given instructions to take her to the village for her own safety and, if at all possible, to capture the Akatsuki members. Additionally, if Darth Vader gets in the way of your mission, we're giving you orders to capture him. As he left the room with the impression that they would encounter the Sith on this mission no matter what, they both said, Yes, masters. Since the three members of the organization were among the strongest they could muster at the time at Euro, one was obviously an expert in explosives, the other was a puppet master, and the last seemed to be a kind of insane priest who was mumbling about not being able to sacrifice her to his god Euro. Yugito had been forced to fight the Red Clouds, as she had come to call them, in an attempt to give her a chance at escape, but it had been in vain. But before any of the Akatsuki members could even try to restrain her, they all heard the sounds of deep breathing, followed by Hidan murmuring, Fuck me, not again. The two members of the organization that were left turned to watch Darth Vader emerge from the woods with his lightsaber in hand after he flew straight into and then through a tree that was only 10 feet away. Sasori recalled all the information the other members had given him about this since Lord, so he made the decision to overwhelm him with numbers in the hopes that it would be enough to kill him at last. To their surprise, however, they saw a second figure carrying the same type of weapon emerge from the woods beside the greater, and they were horrified to see that it was none other than the organization's deserter, Itachi Uchiha. When Vader chose to introduce his apprentice, Sasuke recognized his brother right away. Well, isn't this a spry? Meet both the Jedi and the Akatsuki here, and where are my manners? Allow me to introduce my apprentice, formerly of the Leaf Village, Darth Raptor. Was even more startling when he saw the two Jedi from the Hidden Leaf also enter the clearing. Deidara was now extremely worried that Itachi had turned into a Sith Lord, making him even more dangerous than before, and that the insane bomber had no adequate defense against his new powers. Sasori wasted no time in unleashing his puppet army upon the Jedi and Sith warriors who were trying to remove their target from them. Hidan had just moved into a fighting stance when he saw the expression on the Force user's face and knew that this was going to be one of those battles. He prepared for the fight by bringing his scythe into an attack position and preparing to sacrifice one or two of these individuals to his god. The Sith and Jedi immediately took off their traveling cloaks and went for their lightsabers as soon as the three Akatsuki members and the army of deadly puppets were gathered. The blades of various colors came to life with a sharp hiss, ready to assist their wielders in this lethal dance of death. Her apprentice's brother, now known as Darth Raptor, was a sight to behold, as his black lightsaber, which was rare in finding a crystal like that, cut down just about everything and everyone in its path. Kim noticed the deadly look that was the Sith warriors as they ran right into the middle of the action and was truly surprised by their abilities as they cut the puppets down like they were nothing. He wasted no time in doing everything he could to defeat this overwhelming opponent and his abilities. She realized that Vader had been holding back and that he could have easily taken her head without warning when she had been sent to retrieve him in the Land of Wind, but it was Vader who still made her shiver as she watched the duel. Wielding Sith Lord slay almost twice as many enemies as his apprentice. Hidan confronted Sasuke, only to see his brand new scythe sliced to ribbons in front of his eyes before being decapitated with a single, clean blow to the throat. At the same time, the other two key members of the group they were now fighting pursued the two Jedi with great prejudice. Kim realized that she would be dead by now if it weren't for her training and years of experience in the Force, as the strange blonde man riding on what appeared to be a clay bird was throwing strange animal-like creatures that exploded. He was growing more dangerous every second, and she wouldn't need much more assistance to defeat him. Even more startling to her was the fact that her apprentice was looking at the subsequent fight with his brother with mixed feelings, saying, "Sasuke, I need your help here right now." Unexpectedly, he wavered between assisting his master and trying to kill his brother, but in the end, he chose to assist his master because he realized that there was still a chance to capture or kill him later. He then recalled one of his sensei's lessons about how Earth was vulnerable to lightning attacks and realized that the clay bird had some Earth element in addition to his bomb. Like animals, he realized that they now had a slight advantage and might be able to permanently remove this one member from service. However, there was still a huge battle going on with his partner, who was currently fighting the Sith, and they both heard what sounded like curses coming from the head of the homicidal priest and realized that he was not dead but at least no longer a threat to them at this time. Kim was able to seize Deidara and his clay bird thanks to the Force grip, which gave Sasuke the opportunity he needed to put a Chidori right through the missing ninja's chest, ending his threat before it could escalate into a serious conflict with him. Sasori was shocked to see how easily the Jedi had defeated his partner and one of their colleagues, but it was the two Sith Lords at Euro, who were now wreaking havoc on his army that had once destroyed an entire nation at Euro, rather than the Jedi that made him genuinely fearful for the first time in years. A lot of his puppets had finally surrounded the deadly Sith Lord and were about to enter him when he seemed to send you jumping into the air and hovering there for a second. Then what appeared to be a strange energy source around his body shot out words that disintegrated many of the puppets upon contact and severely damaged a good many more. Darth Vader was truly a sight to behold, both in awe and in absolute fear as he cut down on it after opponent, often crushing them without even touching them with a simple movement of his fingertips. By this time, the two Jedi had joined him in destroying his puppets, and Sasori realized that he needed to use the trump card that the Akatsuki's secret leader had given him because the four special warriors would pose a serious threat to his plans to host the two-tailed cats for his organization. When Sasori pulled out a rather large school, he immediately opened something very large in a cloud of smoke. When the smoke cleared, a huge metal monster that resembled a battlefield droid and appeared to have been made specifically to kill Jedi was revealed. The droid appeared to take one glance at Vader before launching a powerful energy wave at the Sith Lord, who extended his hand to prevent the energy from destroying him or striking his apprentice or the Jedi, forcing him back at least a foot. Vader then moved his hand forward and hurled some force lightning at the droid's feet. As soon as the droid tried to restart itself following the electrical shock from the lightning, he hurried at it, hurling his two lightsabers, severing the droid's front feet. The force then caught his blades and slammed them into the droid's head as he started to cut it to pieces. He then leapt off the head, removing one of its legs at me, and leapt to the ground. In a split second, he caught the entire droid in a force grip, lifting it into the air. He then crushed the battlefield droid as if it were nothing, and finally he leapt into the air, activating his lightsabers and cutting it in two. Sasori was too stunned to move when the powerful Sith Lord cut him down with the blue-bladed lightsaber that was now protruding from his back after piercing his human heart with it. When he finally landed on the other side of the droid, it was in two large pieces. He then turned his attention to the puppet master and started to advance upon the missing ninja. Despite knowing that he would die in a minute, Sasori chose to speak to his former comrade, asking, "Itachi, are you at peace now?" "No, I will never be at peace for what has been taken from me and what I have been forced to do." "I think I can understand what you mean by that," Sasori answered with a smile. "I had hoped to see my grandmother again, but at least I die with a sense of honor more than what Darth Vader has done to us. Vader and you might be the only things preventing them." After saying his final words, Vader and Raptor gently placed him on the ground and shut the puppet master's eyes. Vader then turned to face Hidan and realized he needed to take action at last. He then approached the murderous priest's head and knelt down in front of the terrified as Vader applied a seal to it, which caused it to glow brilliantly. As soon as the seal and light disappeared, Hidan's eyes widened and his head and body started to rapidly age and dissolve into nothingness until there was only a mangled, shriveled corpse on the ground for everyone to see. Sasuke was now trembling with anticipation at the thought of fighting his brother, and Kim and Sasuke were in complete disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Itachi's senses were kept open by all of his years of shinobi experience, and by the time his master overcame her shock at what she had just witnessed, her student launched an assault in an attempt to kill his brother and exact revenge on his clan. He was able to ignite his lightsaber and easily block his brother's incoming blow thanks to his battle-hardened reflexes and the enhancements that were given to him by the Force. However, before they could even think about continuing, Sasuke used the Force to push Vader away so he could fight his brother peacefully. The two brothers were a blur of activity as they mercilessly blocked and attacked one another. Kim could see that they were strong and talented, but they still had a lot of training left before they could become either knight or masters of the Force's methods. The only thing that separated them in their fierce battle to defeat each other was that Itachi was only attempting to disarm his brother rather than hurt him, whereas his brother was attempting to take his own life and was succumbing to both the curse seal on the back of his neck and the dark side's influence. Sasuke was frantically searching for a chance to kill his brother, but only 2 people reported feeling the force again. He was flung into a tree and then another, and the second time he saw Vader approaching him, he was completely taken aback by what remained of the mask that had previously concealed this man's identity from them. It was the face of someone he had been frantically searching for, but his mask had fallen off from the damage of the attack that was launched upon him, and his other hand was now badly damaged from the attack he had unleashed upon the Sith Lord. "Why are you doing this, Naruto?" Sasuke questioned his longtime friend. With one last motion of his hands, Kim was completely taken aback to discover that the young man they had been searching for so long was actually the dangerous Sith Lord Darth Vader, who used the Force to knock out the young Uchiha. When Kim looked up, she saw that her apprentice was unconscious, but okay. Itachi was carrying the injured Yugito to the middle of the field, which was large enough to accommodate a starship of considerable size, and she heard what sounded like a ship flying overhead before it landed, reminding her of an old Republic gunship. Kim stood up straight and said, "You may not trust us, but it is safer for you and her as well as the other when you're hiding in the hidden leaf. Let the village and the Jedi protect you." This statement stopped him cold. "As I told Master Silas, you should be very cautious about them," he said harshly, glaring into her eyes before adding, "They are ninjas and deception is one of their many tools. In this case you are 2 trusting Jedi." "We see the good in people while you see the evil in them," she responded. "You forget that I live here and that I have never seen any evil in the people who have shown me kindness and joy throughout my life. While I acknowledge that people deserve a chance at redemption, they don't deserve the endless numbers that your order is known to give away. If you forgot," he added, "I was exiled because of the people and a woman who had to try to maintain the peace. Have you ever considered joining us since you have the power to change things? When I extend the Force, I sense both your right and dark sides, but I also feel a very strong presence in the village where I was born, so I cannot trust it." He told her, "I cannot trust any of you with my safety or those like me until that feeling is gone and the truth about what was done to me is revealed." She watched as the doors of the gunship closed and the ship took off, returning to the land of water. Subsequently, she produced a tiny communication device and said, "Track the gunship." "Yes, sir," was the device's response. Upon discovering the true identity of Darth Vader, Viral expressed surprise, saying, "So the Fox's host is even more dangerous than we first anticipated, my master." Danzo, who was actually Darth Kronos, a strong dark Sith Lord, had gone to considerable measures to not only sway the village council but also to use his stolen Sharingan and Force skills to persuade the female Hokage to exile the Jincha, Riki, so that his apprentice could easily apprehend him. The young boy, who was now a full-fledged Sith Lord and had the powers of a Jedi Knight at his command, was something neither of them had expected. He somehow brought with him the greatest enemy the Sith Order had ever faced, the Jedi. Fortunately, however, the Jedi had come in handy. They had disclosed the new Sith temple's location on the borders of the Land of Water, and they knew that the Hidden Leaf would be able to capture at least 2 Jincha, Riki, as well as potential warriors for the Sith Order to use as weapons. At the same time, his apprentice had devised a plan to bring the rest of them running to the Leaf, knowing that neither the Jedi nor the new Sith could stop their new master plan. One of the troopers, a lieutenant, had just watched the man who had saved the Land of Water from destruction enter what was once the Temple of the Water but was now the Sith Temple of Balance. Naruto and Itachi had just stepped out of the gunship on their way back to the Temple of Balance to rest after their exhausting battle with the Akatsuki members and the 2 Jedi who had just recently learned his true identity as Darth Vader. His tiny holographic communication device called him as he watched the 2 new Sith Lords enter the temple. He turned it on, bringing the image of Mizuka May to life. The image of the stunning and dangerous redhead woman then spoke to the trooper with a distinct sense of urgency, saying, "Lieutenant, are Raptor and Lord Vader with you?" In a respectful tone, he answered her, "They have just entered the temple, my lady." With a nod, she told him, "I need you to go to the general at once and inform him at once that we have a Red Cloud type emergency. He'll understand." Her tone was so solemn that it was impossible for him to misunderstand her. With a nod, the trooper said, "It will be done, my lady." After deactivating the communicator, the trooper hurried into the temple to deliver the message from the Mizukage. Mavis, Silas Kim, and a number of Jedi Masters now gathered in the council room to discuss what they had just discovered. "So the boy this entire village has been looking for is in fact Darth Vader. He must be very strong in the Force to be able to hide his presence from us." One of the more obstinate Jedi Masters remarked, "If he is so strong in the Force, surely he can see being here in this village and joining with us would be the safer course of action." Since there was more going on than they realized, Kim made the decision to tell her what the new Sith Lord had told her. It's that kind of attitude that he finds absolutely repulsive, and I hate to admit that he might be right about my student he's giving into the darkness, and I don't know if I can save him from it. Then you'll just have to try harder. He added that we don't know everything, and I have to agree with him that these people are masters of deception because they have withheld information about him from us. He then said something that surprised me. There's a chance that the old Sith are here in the village, she said, but then she saw that one of the masters was thinking deeply. I believe the new Sith speaks the truth. There is no light, no dark side, only force with them. One of the more cocky masters blurted out for everyone to hear, "You cannot be serious. They're Sith, anything that they say is a lie." And yet you forget that the current person in charge of this military village is one of the people who tried to turn this Sith warrior into a weapon for his own purposes. And let us not forget that the former Hokage is mysteriously in a coma by unknown means, with him now in power and demanding things of the Jedi Order, Silas said, turning to face the master before delivering a speech that made his intentions on the matter very clear. None of them realized that Sasuke was standing outside the room listening in on their conversation. As the conversation went on, Uchiha's only option was to listen and process what he was hearing. This new Hokage has not earned one bit of our trust, and what is worse, he continues to demand things of us. For the moment we must keep the location of the Sith temple hidden until we know his true intentions, and what the new Sith have said must be taken seriously, Silas said, reiterating his position to everyone in the room. I agree with Master Silas, Kim said after nodding her head. We have heard rumors of other Sith being on this world other than the ones we know are already here. Very well, Silas, we will leave the investigation in your hands for the time being. The masters who had presided over their conceit looked at one another, recognized the wisdom and logic in their words, and also decided on this next step. The two Sith lords immediately disembarked from their transportation when the Old Republic gunship flew straight into a large courtyard in the Hidden Mist village that had been set up for ships like it. Akima Fett then motioned for them to follow her into the Cage Mansion to begin the emergency meeting that Mei had called for. Following their entrance into the war room, Naruto, Akima and Itachi bowed to Mizuga Mei, who gestured for them to enter before saying, "Sorry to interrupt you both from your much deserved rest, but we have an urgent matter to attend to and we're running out of time." Lord Vader, Lord Raptor, I appreciate you coming so soon. The news I have may be our only chance to avenge our fallen, as we have discovered the location of the Akatsuki leader as well as several members, and we must move fast, spoke the captain, one of the troopers, as he approached them with a map of the hidden rain village. Then, with a serious expression on his face, Naruto stated, Akima, get your best Mandalorian ready for battle, because we are going to face one of the Dark Sith and hopefully eliminate the Red Clouds for good. Knowing that the Sith Lord of Balance was dead and on his way to the Land of Rain to finally put an end to their shared enemy's life, Mei hurried up to him, placed her hand on his shoulder, and said calmly and urgently, "There's something else you need to know, Naruto." He gave her a direct look as she continued, "Tsunade has been removed from the position of Hokage and has been replaced by the old Warhawk Danzo. She's in some form of a coma. We don't know what's going to happen to her." Itachi recognized that expression on his master's face and realized right away that they would have a busy day. Focusing on his connection to the Force, Danzo faced the window of the Hokage's office as the door opened to reveal a Jedi in training named Uchiha Sasuke. The old man recognized him and grinned as he turned to face Sasuke and said, "Master Uchiha, what do I owe you for the pleasure of your visit? The Jedi have decided to keep the village in the dark about the location of my old teammate. I feel so conflicted, and I believe that they do not trust anymore Lord Hokage. It is distressing to me that after all this time that they cannot trust you and that they show no real interest in helping us stop the threat of the Akatsuki once and for all," Danzo said, settling into his chair and meeting the young man's eyes. "I was able to find out where the Sith temple was, and if what they were discussing is any indication that the other Jincha, Riki, are also present, then what should I do?" Sasuke couldn't help but feel that the new Hokage was correct about everything. "Are you not one of my shinobi anymore?" he questioned him. "Yes, Lord Hokage, I still am." Danzo was only pleased to hear this. "Then I give you your orders. You will take a team and go to the temple. Your objectives are to capture the two hosts and bring them back here by force if necessary, and as for the other Sith, they are to be eliminated, including your brother, but bring us back Naruto." After bowing to the Hokage, Sasuke departed with the odd black anbu that wore the root symbol on their heads. With a distinct goal in mind, Silas and Mavis had exited the council meeting room. "What are we doing here, Master?" Mavis asked her master. Once they were safely concealed in a hole in the ceiling, he initially ignored her, saying, "I felt the pull of the Force was bringing me here. Something is going to happen here, my apprentice." As the two of them peered down into the spacious hallway, they noticed a young woman and a severely injured man lying on the floor, while another man wearing an odd mask was moving around the room with three other people a short distance away. After that, the men in the mask said, "I don't know why you have betrayed Pain, and to a false Sith of all people. You corrupted our purpose long ago." Viral, the injured man said, gazing up at him with strange eyes. "Those eyes of yours will not stop Darth Vader and the Jedi from destroying you all once and for all. Don't think that this false Sith will be enough to beat us, after all you lie here broken in," the masked man said, his single eye narrowing dangerously before he spoke in a tone of voice that left no room for misinterpretation. Both Viral and the two Jedi sensed a powerful force coming toward them at that precise moment. The two guards who had been stationed in the room abruptly flew back into midair, colliding with the back wall and gradually being strangled to unconsciousness. Viral walked forward with a superior smirk on his face, thinking that there was no way this mere child could possibly feed him as well as his master's previous apprentice Orochimaru. This shocked everyone as the doors flew open and the hooded figure of Darth Vader, the Sith Lord of Balance, entered the room as if he owned it. Behind him were his own apprentice and up to 5 Mandalorians. "Well, look what we have here," the so-called Sith of Balance come before us seeking to know the true power of the dark side of the Force. Speaking to his friends and allies, Naruto turned to face Pain and Conan before saying, "Get those two out of here as soon as possible. I will deal with him and Snake as well as his butt buddy." The Snake and his apprentice took this personally and started to move toward Naruto. However, he shot out his hands, summoning the Force to send them flying into the wall across from him. The two of them used the ladies in the Force to prevent themselves from being crushed to death, but they hit the ground and drew their lightsabers. Kabuto, Orochimaru's personal apprentice, had a blood-red double-bladed lightsaber that blazed to life along with his master's as they approached the ancient foe. However, as they did, he extended both of his arms, producing what appeared to be lightsabers in both hands, which then came to life in a brilliant display of red and blue. Orochimaru's lightsaber was dark purple. For the first time, Viral became alarmed when he sensed the power emanating from the Sith Lord of Balance. He immediately entered combat, slicing through the room as he quickly demonstrated that he was more than capable of handling the two dark Sith hands. Naruto not only easily blocked parries every move, but he also put them on the defensive with each one. Yugito had often wondered what it would be like to have children, but she was also afraid of what would happen to her seal. Yugito was a little scared for her fellow host as she watched Fa not only smile at the children but also rub her swollen belly. Fa and Yugito were playing in the courtyard of what was once the Water Monk Temple, where many of the younglings were playing happily with each other. However, they were all shocked and worried as they observed the happy children playing in the room because they believed that the temple had been rocked by an explosion, and the door leading out of the courtyard was one of its hinges. When the two women and the kids looked up, they saw strange ninjas in black gear that looked like troopers but had a darker mission. Sasuke Uchiha, a young Jedi in training, was leading them. The Sannin's apprentice, Darth Viral, also known as Toby, watched in disbelief as Naruto continued to block and counter each and every one of the Snake Sannin's moves as if they were insignificant. He realized that he had greatly underestimated his opponent and fellow Sith Lord. Silas and Mavis watched in complete awe of Naruto's superior skills as the current Darth Vader and Sith Lord of Balance. He quickly engaged the two Sith apprentices who were trying to rejoin the Order, and Viral decided to back off knowing that his master's plan was working and that it would be foolish to try to kill Vader now with his apprentice and warriors close by. In addition to observing the battle and assessing the young Sith Lord's abilities for future use, Silas also retrieved his communicator and summoned the other Jedi Masters in the Hidden Leaf Village to observe the action unfolding right in front of them. The Jedi Council's tiny holographic representations watched in anticipation as the Sith Lord of Balance taught the two dark side apprentices without even blinking an eye and realized that he was only playing with them and establishing their strategies. Eventually, the younger of the two succeeded in pushing Vader off a landing, but instead of winning, they were also yanked off the side due to his own force abilities, and he landed without any issues before swiftly lighting his lightsabers and attacking. Just as the younger apprentice's dual staff saber was about to be struck by the red and blue blades, the snake tried to strike him but was deflected by the other saber. Vader was able to quickly separate the two and push the Snake Sannin into a nearby wall with enough force to knock him out for a few seconds before attacking the younger apprentice. Vader had not even reactivated his lightsabers and was merely dodging every blow as if it were nothing to him, only activating them at the last second to avoid being hit. The younger one became agitated and more aggressive, which made him sloppy at the same time. The tiny seal that Vader had prepared for him to neutralize his unique ability and put an end to his wicked life once and for all was hidden from the young Sith Lord. By this point, Orochimaru had finally regained consciousness, only to watch in horror as the Sith Lord of Balance dismantled his apprentice. Orochimaru watched in horror as his apprentice, or someone he could almost consider a son, was fatally injured and then forcefully pushed off the nearby ledge. Vader was able to block one more strike in a flash of movement that was so quick even the Snake Sanin and the Jedi Council could not keep up with it. He then managed to place the seal on the apprentice's neck and cut his lightsaber into the middle before impaling his opponent upon his sabers. Orochimaru sprinted past his opponent and leapt off the ledge to reach his apprentice, who was in complete disbelief because he was not healing himself due to his abilities. He then noticed the strange seal on his neck, which was now spreading, and he realized with horror that Naruto had undoubtedly discovered his heritage as an Uzumaki, who were renowned for their abilities with seals, making even his own knowledge of seals seem weak in comparison. Although he was able to comprehend the majority of the seal's working, he realized that it was far more sophisticated than he had ever imagined, and that the only person he knew could even start to make heads or tails of this seal would be his old teammate Jiraiya, who had undoubtedly assisted the Sith Lord in his ascent to power. Kabuto stared into his master's eyes and said, "Master, I am an unworthy apprentice. I'm not like you, I never was." He could feel his body slowly disintegrating because he was unable to heal himself. In order to be heard by the Sannin, Naruto then approached the edge and said, "You have forgotten the first and only reality of the Dark Sith Orochimaru. There can only be two, a master and an apprentice." As he heard the young Sith master say, "And judging by what I see, you are no longer his apprentice and you have been replaced," the Snake Sannin had grown genuinely furious. The two Sith fought a fierce battle of cunning and force knowledge as Orochimaru took one of the remaining fragments of Kabuto's broken lightsaber and launched an assault. Vader's experience and knowledge of the Force clearly outmatched that of the Snakes, even though the Sannin was proving to be more difficult than his apprentice had. He eventually found an opening and disarmed him, then swiftly grabbed the Sannin and started slamming into various objects, such as the floor and wall. Looking directly into Vader's eyes, Orochimaru started pleading, "Please show mercy." He then struck the snake with some force lightning and watched him turn to mud, saying, "Like you showed mercy to all those people who pleaded to you to spare them." When he looked up, he saw the snake fleeing as quickly as he could. By this time, two Mandalorians had rushed into the room and started shooting at the Snake Sannin in an attempt to strike him. Vader stopped the Mandalorians from flying away after him, saying, "Let him go. He may be at a Jedi Knight's level, but he is a master shinobi and I will not have you risking your lives to take him down and be killed in the process." As he gestured for them to follow him into the main room where his battle had started, they nodded to him and began to descend. The two Jedi stayed in their hiding spot, holding the communicator that was recording and transmitting the events that had just happened, only to see him extend his hand in their direction and call for the Force to yank the communicator from Silas's hand. "You Jedi think you are superior to everything and everyone, and yet here I am doing the dirty work for you, and the only Jedi that I would even remotely trust is the one you sent to spy on us," Vader said, catching it with little effort and holding it in front of him so he could look at the shocked faces of the Jedi Council. "Don't worry, I won't hurt your Jedi. Go away and deal with your own issues. If I were you, I would learn the truth about your kind hosts." After shocking everyone by smashing the communicator with his bare hand, he turned to face the two Jedi and remarked, "You did a great job hiding your presence from me, Silas, but your apprentice here still has a lot to learn." When the Sith Lord of Balance and his Mandalorian's allies saw Silas and Mavis leaping down and revealing themselves, they immediately went into a defensive stance before standing down when Vader signaled for them to stop and moved forward in front of the two Jedi. Silas then said, "You want something from us, but what?" "I want to know your intentions and that of your order. The fact that you are in such a friendly relationship with the Hidden Leaf does not help matters either. I cannot say about the Jedi Order and the Hidden Leaf, but for myself and my apprentice we are keeping an open mind. I hope you are as well," Silas said after acknowledging that what the Sith had said was not far from how he had been feeling. "Perhaps, but even I will admit that I am overly cautious when it comes to dealing with the Hidden Leaf, but one can hope," said Naruto. The Mandalorians stood prepared for any orders Naruto might give them as he spoke in a commanding voice. "Everyone back to the ship now." Before any of them could say another word, they felt a disturbance in the Force so strong that it physically affected all the Force users in the room. "We're on our way back to the temple." As soon as he realized that something horrible had occurred, Silas decided, "We are coming with you." Everyone turned to stare at the two Jedi, who were taken aback. "Why should we trust you?" "I wish to know what is going on as well and if the Jedi Council was involved. After all, I'm not a member," Silas responded. As they departed the Rain Tower on their way back to the Land of Water, Naruto gestured for them to follow him. The current Hokage, Danzo, was not pleased to hear Naruto giving the Jedi some much needed advice because he also crushed the communicator, and the exchange was a clear indication that he meant business going forward. The Jedi Council and the Hokage were in his office watching the recording of the two Sith's battle and were, to put it mildly, shocked. It was then said aloud by one of the Jedi Council members, "The young Sith is right, the dark side of the Force is deepening here in the Hidden Leaf. Master Jedi, How do you know that he is not trying to distract or perhaps divide us so that we are easier to conquer in the long run? Danzo said in an older voice than usual after realizing that he would have to put up with the Jedi Masters in this way and that they would become an even bigger problem for him in the future. So why hasn't Lord Hokage exacted any kind of retribution on this village for the alleged numerous things that happened to him here? One of the more circumspect Jedi Masters said, glaring at Danzo and questioning his genuine intentions in this situation. Lord Hokage, the mission to capture the 2 and 7 Tails hosts was successful as well as the secondary objective of eliminating as many Sith warriors as possible as well. However, I was unable to capture my old teammate as he was not present along with my brother. Sasuke Uchiha entered the Hokage's office at this precise moment, oblivious to the Jedi Council members that had gathered at the time. Kim said, "Sasuke, what have you done?" and swiftly took her apprentice by the arm, turning him to face her. Silas and Mavis entered the temple right behind the 2 Sith and the Mandalorians, only to be confronted by the destruction that had been done here. The ships that had left the Rain Village swiftly landed and offloaded their passengers, who then ran to the temple to witness the extent of the carnage and destruction done to the temple and its young inhabitants. After examining one of the bodies, Silas learned that the young victim had been killed by ninja weapons. However, he was shocked by what he saw when he looked at one of the next victims, and his apprentice was equally shocked by what she saw. "By the Force Master, is that what I think it is? Most of them have been killed by the shinobi who invaded this temple, but I recognize these wounds. They were created by a lightsaber, and since we saw the majority of the Sith in battle with Lord Vader, I believe it was done by a Jedi," he said, his expression telling her everything she needed to know. "Naruto, those recordings will undoubtedly hold the answers you seek, but they will also hold a great deal of pain as well," Silas said, stepping forward to observe a holographic recording system after hearing the sounds of children and Mandalorians, who were now serving as their bodyguards, walking towards the ship and the sounds that followed as he watched Naruto walk towards a wall. Silas realized that something else had happened here that had the young Sith on edge. After meeting his eyes, Naruto said, "I have to know what happened, and besides I must know what happened here to those like me that were here for protection." At this point, Itachi approached and started watching the recordings as well. He was so horrified by what he saw that he exclaimed, "It can't be, it just can't be him." "I am sorry, but it is," Naruto said in a reassuring tone as he turned to face his apprentice. One of the Mandalorians rushed into the temple before anyone could say anything more, saying in a frantic tone, "My lord, one of our star destroyers that is en route to pick us up has detected what appears to be a small fleet of old separatist starships." Silas then turned to the warrior and inquired, what was their course? This attracted everyone's attention. He told them, "The Hidden Leaf is their destination." "You right all along, Naruto. How else would they know that 2 hosts had suddenly appeared in the Hidden Leaf?" Mavis then said aloud for everyone to hear. "They're also gambling on the fact that I will go to save them, and in a way they are right, but I intend to do it my way." The 2 young ladies were examined by the Jedi Masters, who were horrified by what had been done and the consequences that would follow for all of them. Kim had never been so furious with anyone, and it did not help her in the least that her own student had carried out these crimes. Before they could even discuss what had happened or what was coming, the Hokage Tower and the majority of the village shook violently. Almost everyone in the room went into battle mode, and when they looked out the office window, they saw 3 starships attacking the village and a strange white man who appeared to be a plant man marching down the village's roads, attacking anyone and anything that moved. The communication system suddenly came to life, revealing Orochimaru and an odd man dressed in an Akatsuki outfit and sporting an odd orange spiral mask. The man said, "Greetings to the Jedi Council and you as well, Lord Hokage. I will be direct and to the point. Give the 2 Jincha, Riki to me, and I'll stop the violence in your village." However, before Danzo could even think about accepting the proposal that had been presented to him, one of the Jedi Masters beat him to the punch and declared, "We will not allow you to take these young women for whatever dastardly plans you have for them." The man wearing the spiral mask then squinted and said in a chilly tone, "Then we will walk over your cold corpses to retrieve them." As soon as the communication was cut off, the attack started, with many Jedi using their communicators to coordinate counterattacks against the invading forces with even greater vigor than before. After glancing out the office window at the stadium, one of the masters turned to face Kim and Sasuke and said, "Everyone get to the stadium as soon as possible. We can have an easier time defending the civilians as well as these 2, and we will have a talk later." Uchiha, in a commanding voice that left no room for error. The strange warriors turned out to be more dangerous than they had anticipated, so it had not been easy to get to Chunin Exam Stadium. Once inside, they were able to erect a barrier to protect the 2 hosts and the civilians, but it was becoming more challenging as the enemy began to overwhelm their defenses. Due to enemy tactics, a large number of shinobi and Jedi were now being pushed into the middle of the stadium. At this point, the two Dark Sith announced their presence and gave the order to halt the attack. "I am most impressed with your abilities, Jedi, but give us the two hosts or you will all die right here right now," Viral said, speaking for everyone to hear. After glancing at Danzo, Hotaru realized that he was going to turn them over to the evil Sith, but his personal intentions were still unclear to the Jedi Master, who hoped that his friend Silas would be there to support him. Before any of them could respond, they were all startled by what sounded like a huge explosion in the distance, followed by another explosion. Before the two Dark Sith could even order the Jedi and Leaf Shinobi to be killed, they were rescued by what appeared to be old Republic gunships that were firing into the White Zetsu army that had invaded the stadium and were currently shooting them down without feeling guilty. At this point, Viral and Orochimaru were shocked to see the gunships entering the battle, but they also noticed that one gunship in particular had targeted them. Then, they saw Darth Vader's face standing behind a number of water troopers, his face intense. Vader wasted no time in ordering the troopers to open fire, intending to kill the two Dark Sith who had made so many people's lives in the elemental nations a living hell. Vader knew without a doubt that the two Sith had escaped, but he had to save the Jedi and regrettably some Leaf ninjas. As soon as the gunship's weapons were released, the two Dark Sith immediately fled towards the Hokage monument, hoping that at least one of their cruisers had survived the initial attack by the water troops. Following their departure from the stadium, the Vader's gunships launched an assault on the White Army, immediately taking on a number of Jedi Masters as well as Fu and Yugito, who were delighted to see the Sith Lord of the Balance and his apprentice. If the two Dark Sith escape not only this village but the world, this war may never end as they will rally many to their side, said an elderly council member who had shared Silas's personal feelings about a number of issues. He turned to face him and Vader. "I agree with you, Master Jedi. Lord Raptor, once we land to deal with this Sith threat, if I want you to go after Viral and the Snake and do everything in your power to end them, will find their master in time." He said to Vader, "Yes, Master, I understand." He then watched with a terrified expression on her face as Fu grabbed his arm and said, "Don't you die on us, okay?" As the gunship landed and offloaded the Jedi Masters and the two female hosts, he told her, "Do not worry, my love. I have no intention of dying today. Other people, however, will not be so lucky." The gunship with Itachi then flew off towards the Hokage monument and another gunship that was caring for a master and apprentice who were currently at odds. When Kim and Sasuke saw the Snake Sanin himself preparing to stop them, they landed their gunship upon the monument and prepared for battle. The Jedi ninjas and Sith of Balance immediately went into battle against the White Army. As the Black Zetsu attempted to take control of the situation involving his ship, which had been successfully attacked by the Land of the Waters forces, the sounds of rumbling and distant burning fires reverberated throughout the Separatist ship's command deck. At this precise moment, one of the super battle droids approached him and said, "CMDR. The ship is slowly disintegrating and will explode in a few minutes, so we can't save it. We have to leave right away to help Master Viral." As he moved toward the command deck's exit, Zetsu could only get bigger. He yelled, "Very well, evacuate the ship and set a collision course for the village. I want everyone to launch a coordinated attack on our adversaries." "Roger, Roger." One of the droids said in a deep voice that only a super battle droid could have, and they could see it right in front of him. Its voice was used to prepare everyone and everything to leave the ship with the specific goal of causing the Hidden Leaf village as much damage as possible. Zetsu eventually arrived at one of the main cargo holds, which were used to store a variety of military supplies and equipment, some of which were prototypes in their own right. He jumped into one of them immediately as a massive explosion rocked the cargo hold, sending fire and flaming wreckage shooting towards him just as he was getting into the suit. He then proceeded to jump out of the cargo hold, hitting the ground as he watched the Separatist cruiser crash into the large wall that protected the village and then explode with tremendous force. His expression only grew more irate when he looked up to see that only one of the other cruisers was still standing, while the other had only minor damage and was surviving. He then turned to face the two ships and saw that laser fire was now slamming into the side of the damaged cruiser, and he also saw what appeared to be an old Republic Star Destroyer that was viciously attacking the cruiser that had the Land of Water symbol on its hull. Zetsu swiftly turned to the rest of his clones and the droids and signaled for them to follow him into the center of the village as he watched the battle taking place overhead with a sense of resentment that everything your organization had planned was being undone by that Nine-Tails host. Mavis watched Naruto light up his twin lightsabers and then fight the enemy forces with all of his strength as he and a few other Jedi walked into the battle to save the Hidden Leaf village from certain destruction. With a fierce expression on his face, Mavis and the other Jedi watched as the Sith Lord of Balance started to destroy the enemy forces. He allowed the Force to lead him in this effort to prevent the destruction of his former home, and the water troopers who had initially assisted him in finding the location known as the Lost Era were by his side. Despite their special skills, none of the white clones could defeat him because the Force led him in his attempts to cut down instead. A small troop transport was also seen flying through the area at that precise moment when a droid tank fired a round, striking it in the side and sending it flying into a nearby building before colliding with the ground directly in front of them. At that point, the forward door opened, revealing a number of mist ninjas and water troopers. The Jedi and Sith of balance started to change the tide of the battle, and the new warriors launched their full arsenal of weapons, including blaster fire and nin jutsu, upon the White Clone Army and its droid counterpart. The ruthlessness of the Sith and their desire to eliminate as many enemies as possible, and the fact that Naruto frequently defended civilians even though they could tell he wanted nothing more than to punish some of them for what they had done to him so long ago, allowed him to demonstrate his mastery of the Force in this battle. He did this with a coolness and calmness that was typical of Jedi in this day and age. He oversaw his own battalion of water troopers at the same time. They were all veterans, based on the appearance of their white armor with orange and blue markings, as well as the designation 501. With his mechanized battlesuit, Zetsu finally entered the fray and gave the Nine Tails host, now known as Lord Vader, a look of contempt toward what remained of his distinctive face. The two of them locked eyes and literally charged at each other, weapons ready. The suit eventually sustained so much damage that Zetsu was forced to abandon his mechanized terror and flee the battle, knowing that this particular battle was lost but not the war. The Jedi watched in disbelief as this young man, who would have suffered greatly, was literally tearing apart something that would cause them serious problems. As the strange white plant, like man, started to run away, the Sith Lord watched the hulking remnant and allowed his soldiers to be pierced to buy him the time he needed to get away. After letting out a little cry and using a single swipe of his lightsaber to decapitate a droid, Vader started to sense the Force's powerful presence warning him that something terrible was about to happen. After noticing that Silas and the Jedi Master shared a similar expression, he turned to one of the troopers and said, "CMDR. We urgently require a transport." "Yes sir, right away sir." Then, knowing that they were going to fight a battle unlike any other, Silas approached the Sith Lord of Balance. "I must say Sasuke, if I had known you had the ability to use the Force, I would have done a lot more to bring you to my side as well as your former teammate." The small transport carrying Sasuke and Kim finally landed on the mountain after spotting the presence of the Snake Sage and their main target. The two of them moved slowly forward as the snake then produced his twin-bladed lightsaber and felt like taunting them a bit. "Two of you are going to pay for all the Jedi and ninja you killed today." Sasuke had mostly fallen for the ruse and was allowing his feelings to rule him. Given the situation, Kim attempted to reassure her apprentice and devise a plan of attack. "We need to take him together and then go after the Sith Lord. I will go in from the right, you go in from the left." "No, I'll take them right away," he yelled as he started to run at the Snake Sage, only to be struck by a blast of Force lightning that sent him flying across the room until he collapsed, his Jedi robes smoking from the assault. "As you can see, my skills in the Force exceed my apprentices that Vader destroyed. Now back down," Orochimaru said, pleased that the boy had managed to pull off this small feat but also disappointed in his development because he was still too stubborn. He then used Force lightning to further his point, which she deflected with her lightsaber, forcing her to acknowledge that, despite her experience, there was a great deal of force used to try to stop the attack. "I don't believe that, traitor." In response to this invitation, the snake lit a weapon at each end and engaged in a duel to determine who was superior. With the hope of a response, the snake persisted in taunting her, saying, "I expected that Sasuke's new teacher would be far more skilled than this." After blocking a blow, he looked her in the eyes and said, "Surely you can do better than this?" This sick and cruel man who now stood in front of her had wounded her pride, and she had fallen for the bait without even realizing it. They had to fight their way to the Hokage monument, and Itachi gripped the door of the Old Republic gunship with all his strength. He could already sense that something bad was happening, and all he could hope was that they would arrive in time. Sasuke was completely taken aback by the snake's actions and started to recover, only to witness his teacher engage in fierce combat he had never seen before. Regretfully, it seemed that the snake had the upper hand throughout the entire altercation, easily striking her in the arms and leg and knocking her to the ground. He then turned off one of the blades on his purple lightsaber and launched a deadly blow. Sasuke didn't waste any time in moving to block the blow, taking the snake by surprise, which only made the man, who was more snake than human, smile. "That's pretty brave of you, Sasuke, but I thought you had learned your lesson by now about taking me on." Taking a determined look into his eyes, Sasuke said, "Remember, I'm not the same child." After that, Kim used force to bring her lightsaber to her hands. She then threw it to her young apprentice, who caught it and went on to fight the snake fiercely. He and the deadly Sith Lord watched as both parties landed strike after strike. At one point, it appeared as though they were evenly matched until Orochimaru found a gap and struck, severing the young man's arm in the process. One force push sent him flying back, hitting his master in the process. The young man glanced at his brother and the young woman who taught him, but he was unable to forget what he had seen. Orochimaru then felt a strong presence in the force as he looked up and saw that Itachi Uchiha, now known as Darth Raptor of the Sith, represented a balance between light and dark. However, he leapt to the aid of one of the most dangerous men on the planet, saying, "Orochimaru, it's hard to believe that you are trained Sith of the dark side." In an attempt to gain favor with this man, the Snake Sage once made fun of him by saying, "Is that jealousy I hear in your voice? You're not even a true Sith." However, Itachi let him down by maintaining his composure and then drawing his own lightsaber, knowing that he would need to eliminate the snake permanently in order to finish his mission. As he ignited his black lightsaber, he said, obviously agitating the snake, "You are merely a pawn to this Dark Lord, or have you forgotten the rule of two already, a master and an apprentice?" Raptor chose to employ an ancient Sith strategy that his master had taught him: break them before you fight them. The snake let his rage get the better of him and plunged into the dark side as he rushed forward. "And as my master informed you, Orochimaru, you have been replaced and are no longer his apprentice." Both of them were trained in the Jedi arts and ninja techniques, making them formidable opponents. They fought a fierce battle, trading blows and blocking attacks as they went. Raptor, on the other hand, was held in midair as he felt a strong pressure trying to crush his entire body, only to his own knowledge and strength in the force that kept him alive. This occurred before a winner could even be determined, though, as they both felt a strong presence in the force that separated them and sent a snake flying into the ship with such force that he was rendered unconscious. Looking at Itachi as if he were an insect, Darth Viral, the Dark Lord of the Sith's true apprentice and leader of Akatsuki, approached him holding his hand in midair and said, "I must say I'm quite impressed with you. I only wish I had discovered your ability instead of that wretched Vader." But despite his pain, Itachi managed to maintain his focus as he said, "Then I am fortunate that you did not discover my abilities, as also you who was responsible for my partner's death. I still find it hard to believe that you were trying to save some of your clan that day, and it was me who finished them off," Viral said, laughing. "With the exception of your younger brother." Darth Viral's eyes narrowed in rage as he felt a powerful presence in the force. "I know what you did to my master. I may not know who you are, but he will stop you." However, it was stronger than the last time he felt it, and there was another nearby. Suddenly, he was launched straight into the ship, and he saw Darth Vader carefully lower his apprentice to the ground. "Forgive me, my lord, but I failed you," Raptor said, looking up into his master's eyes but seeing only worry rather than disappointment. He calmly remarked, "There is no failure here, my apprentice, but I do intend to watch the show." Viral was startled to see Jedi Master Silas in all his splendor as the new presence came into view. The Master Jedi, who disobeys the Council's rules, stood there breathing heavily and exuding an intense aura. Viral had never engaged in combat with a Jedi in his life, but he had faced his master numerous times, and despite his admission that he was intimidated by Darth Vader, he felt no threat from this Jedi. Without warning, he shot out Force lightning at both targets in the hopes of incapacitating them so he could quickly flee. That hope was quickly dashed when they both moved like lightning, their arms outstretched to catch the lightning and then send it straight back at him. He would have undoubtedly been hurt if it weren't for his quick reflexes and training in both Sith and ninja techniques. To his astonishment, he merely held out one hand and absorbed both of the lightning strikes as if they were nothing, slowly absorbing energy from the attack, and he looked at Dark Sith in the eyes. He glanced at them both as they stood their ground now, with a look of determination about them that greatly worried him. He then swiftly shot more lightning, this time only at Silas, hoping that it would be too much for the Jedi to handle. "Boy, you still have a lot to learn." Dark determination was uncommon for a Jedi, he said. However, Viral was adamant about destroying Jedi directly in order to prove himself to his master. "The Jedi and Sith of balance are nothing compared to us. We are more powerful than either of you." Then, in an attempt to tear the two Force users apart, he started tossing them everything from a single rock to a whole tree. Sadly, each of them just moved their hands and started to deflect each attempt, shocking the Dark Sith in the process. The Jedi Master remarked, "You are a powerful Sith, and the dark side has corrupted you with its will." Darth Viral narrowed his one good eye before brandishing his own lightsaber, which had jet black cylinders with red markings scattered throughout. After that, he turned on the red blade and aimed it at the Jedi Master. They immediately started a fierce and precise duel, blocking, parrying, and attempting to knock each other down in quick succession. Kim had honestly never expected Master Silas to be this powerful, and what she had witnessed the Sith Lord of Balance do only increased her concerns about his true power and the potential retaliation he might exact on her student for his actions. Viral had never seen anything like this before, and he saw that Vader was not getting involved, simply watching and standing guard in case anything tried to threaten the injured Jedi and his apprentice. During the battle, two of them were a blur of movement, each trying their hardest to land and strike. They would launch themselves into the air using any object. Silas merely parried and then blocked one of the Dark Sith's attacks, saying, "You have fought well, warrior, now surrender," despite Viral's obvious decline in effectiveness as the battle continued. However, Viral merely grinned behind his mask while using force to push the Jedi Master away. Regrettably, the elderly man only moved 10 feet or so. "No, Master Jedi, this is just the beginning." When he said this, he pressed a button on his wrist and extended his left hand, which caused a number of trees to fall on the wounded fighters and a number of droids to start shooting at the Jedi and Sith of balance. Even though Viral knew they had failed their primary goal, everything was still going as planned, so he took advantage of the opportunity to board his ship and take off without bothering to look back. Before the trees could harm the wounded, Vader swiftly used force to seize them. He then swiftly used force to slam them into the droids in the area, evening the odds in Silas's favor. Even with this strategy, there were still a lot of droids to eliminate, but users swiftly did so and saw 2 more Republic gunships land on the monument while numerous medics rushed to the wounded. Sasuke called out to his old friend, hoping to persuade him to stay. "Naruto, please don't go," as he started to try to get up despite his arm injury and watched as his old friend violently lifted his brother up and started to walk back to one of the nearby gunships. "I can't stay here, especially not with you after what you have done," Naruto said, stopping in his tracks and lowering Itachi onto one of the gurneys inside the dropship before turning to face his old friend. "What did you kill Youngling for?" "It was just orders from the Hokage, I just did as I was told." He begged his friend to parrot his words. But Naruto lost control of his emotions and broke down in front of everyone, saying, "I saw the recordings of what you did to my temple, Sasuke, and you were enjoying it. You will always control your destiny if you keep going down this dark side path." Silas then gestured for one of the troopers to take him back as well. Having said this, he boarded the ship as it swiftly departed from the Hokage monument. As Kim and 3 of the Jedi Masters stood in the temporary council chambers, gazing out at the Hidden Leaf village, they pondered the days ahead. Kim was still unsure of what to do with her young apprentice, but she was also worried about how bad things were going to get after this battle. "Do you think what Vader said is true? It just doesn't seem possible," she said, turning to one of the masters. The council's oldest member, who would actually train Silas and was the most receptive to Vader's opinions, said, "Of balance Vader truly is, and learned from our past we have." In search of clarification, Kim remarked, "You mean the time of the Old Republic and the first Darth Vader?" "Yes, we are in a puzzle, and a deadly one at that," the elderly master said, nodding his head. "Here, both the light and the dark side are very present." "Then we need to keep an eye on this new Hokage as well as your apprentice Kim," said one of the other masters present. She did not say anything. "I agree, master, however I must admit at least today was a victory against the dark side and this white army." "You claim victory, but it's not, my dear Kim. The Second Clone Wars has begun, and the dark side's shroud has fallen." Danzo was now standing on a balcony with a view of his code, named Secret Project, Seed. He claimed that the technology he used to create this clone army had been stolen from Orochimaru's secret labs in the Hidden Leaf, but in reality, the traitor had constructed them for his master before the late Third Hokage found him. A completely compliant army now stood in front of him, and with his apprentice in hands leading the battle, he would first conquer this planet before spreading like a plague to the stars. Since he could see the 4 ships in the distance, he had already given orders to some of his soldiers to seize the Old Republic destroyers and claim them as his own. However, at this precise moment, a young ninja who was carrying bad news interrupted him, the village clan heads, and the civilian council. They heard rumbling as 4 destroyers started to lift off the ground at that precise moment. "My lord, Lady Tsunade and several Jedi are missing, and plus we have no news from the forces you sent to capture those strange ships." In the background, the Imperial March theme starts to play. Thanks to his years of experience as a Sith Lord and ninja, Danzo was able to spot Darth Vader staring out the window of one of the ships and gave him the finger. Anakin and Padme's wedding theme from the film's conclusion begins to play. Naruto walked over to Fu, who was in a bed being examined by the doctors and medical droids, after turning away from the window to gaze at the motionless figure of Tsunade receiving treatment from numerous medics. Then, despite the horrors that lay ahead, she put a loving hand on her swollen face and gazed into her eyes. As the 4 ancient Republic Star destroyers glided through the sky, lit by a stunning sunset, the 2 of them gazed out the window. The village of Kide, the island referred to as the Lost Era. Every one of the nearly 15,000 residents of Kide, who were descended from those who had survived the crash landing of the great star destroyers in the final days of the Clone Wars, could hear the sound of birds as they went about their daily lives. Despite being of the same race in many cases, their small village was well hidden from many of the more dangerous inhabitants of this planet thanks to the many trees that covered one part of the island. The other part of the island was a desolate wasteland of sand that was covered in the wreckage of numerous ships that had once sailed the vast expanse of space like an ocean. However, due to this special planet, leaving was more difficult than it seemed, and all attempts to call for assistance were unsuccessful. Only a small group of people who knew what they were doing were able to come and go. His existence was only known to a small number of non-natives in the village. One of those villages had been destroyed less than 20 years ago due to fear of their immense power in seal art. Everything was calm for a while, but that calm was abruptly broken because many ninja from the land of water were loyal to their cage and daimyo and firmly believed that anyone who was different or had a bloodline deserved to be killed and exterminated from this world. This pitiful excuse from the village was now at the top of their list. Many people who had continued the warrior ways of the clone troopers soon realized what armor had been saved down their family line and, picking up as many blasters as they could, started firing back at their tormentors. However, many people who were just farmers or even parents watching their children grow up quickly reacted by running further into the village in the hopes that the trees would offer some protection. The mist ninjas and their samurai counterparts were initially taken aback by the ferocity that only a select few of these fighters appeared to possess, as well as their tactics, which were simply excellent. The group leader quickly lost patience with the situation and went through multiple sets of hand seals, even slamming into the ground while yelling words they had never heard before. The water forces are initially being driven back, but then, in a cloud of smoke from the leader, a large crocodile with a massive battle axe on its back emerged and started to charge at the defenders with a ruthlessness they had never witnessed before. Even the last Jedi who had once led their ancestors into battle to save the Republic was forced to retreat as their blaster shots only made the creature more enraged. They thought they had lost everything, but then they heard a noise and were shocked to see what appeared to be an old Republic jump ship shooting into the water troops. This caught everyone off guard, as if their Jedi and ancestors had come back from the graves to protect them. A black and dark orange Jedi starfighter from the final days of the war flew overhead, launching its turbo lasers straight into the creature's face. This was followed by at least 3 high-yield torpedoes, which then proceeded to rip the creature back open, ending its life as one of his arms was blown off by the force of the explosions landing not far from the water leader himself, taking everyone by surprise. The troops had enough time to flee and move another group of civilians out of the way, but it was insufficient to stop the creature as it continued to advance upon them. The fighters returned and another sound of something striking the ground were heard. At this point, the big crocodile started to fall forward, which was even more startling because it crushed many of the water troops when it hit them. The civilians felt calm and at peace, but the leader, who was still very much alive and unharmed, took one look at them and their guards and started to advance, only to be stopped by the sense of dread that seized them. They couldn't believe his attention or much of his appearance when the leader turned around and saw the young man, who was no older than 14, with spiky blonde hair and what looked like whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. The young man wore no shirt, but he had odd pieces of armor on both hands that reached his elbows. Your loose black pants were incomparable, but they offered a lot of protection. The leader's eyes, however, were the most unsettling. One was the deepest blue, rivaling the oceans themselves, and the other half was covered in a layer of red with a lot of yellow sticking to it. The only survivor had never finished his own training, so the Jedi would never have been able to finish it. He looks on in disbelief as he says, "The masters of the Force, both light and dark, have chosen their new champion. Force has once again been balanced by the gray user." A small group of warriors appeared behind the young man. One was wearing white and blue armor that had been passed down from her ancestor Rex, and another was wearing armor that was dark green with red undertones and as black as night. With a single motion, the young man's wrist moved, causing 2 cylinders to materialize in his hands. One of the cylinders was red, and the other was blue. For some reason, the leader was more terrified than ever before and nearly wished that he had simply agreed to this crazy mission and taken his captive, the red-headed woman, and her 2 companions all traitors back to the land and water.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.